Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Monday. It is an overreaction Monday as we talk about Atlanta's loss to the Red Bulls. We talk about the weekend in MLS and USL Championship playoffs and USL League One and the international matches that happened around the world. A whole bunch of scoreless draws all over the place. We'll get into all of that and anything else you guys want to get into. What are they dubbing the latest controversy in England? Project Big Picture. We'll get into that probably a little bit this morning. We'll get into that much deeper on Soccer Over There tonight at 7 o'clock because it is a big deal. People are rather upset about this with the government talking about potentially jumping in and saying, nuh-uh, we're not going to allow that. Also, today, if you did not know, in the state of Georgia, early voting starts today. So you have time, but create your plan. And if you want to go vote early, you can start doing that today. But you also have time between now and Election Day. Figure out your strategy, your plan, how you're going to do this, and get it done. Get out and vote.
Amen.
All right. We've got Kevin Egan joining us at 9:30. We've got Jessica Charman joining us at 10. Why do we have two big guests on an Overreaction Monday? Because there's a lot to react to. We're going to get into all the aspects of the goal that the Red Bulls scored. There's a lot to get into with it. We'll get into, with Kevin, kind of how it happened for the two of us on TV and how we tried to handle it and how, what we had to work with and how we were figuring things out on the fly. We'll get into it with Jess from a goalkeeper perspective and just try to cover the whole aspect of it. The couple of things I want to kind of lay out at the very beginning before we get deep into the weeds on that, because it's a difficult one. It's a judgment call. And the conversation coming after the match, and this is including Jair Marufo's comments to Doug Robertson, who was the pool reporter for the match and asked questions about the goal. Other comments that we've already heard from different referees, from different things. Look, the narrative's already been established. It's a judgment call, and they are using a particular line of judgment to make the decision that they made. I disagree with it. I still disagree with it. And we'll get into all of the different reasons why you can agree or disagree as we go. But it's a judgment call. Nothing's going to change from it. It was down to the referee on the day to make the decision that he or she was going to make. Period. It's not a misapplication of the rules. Nope, not at all. There's wiggle room in that. There's gray area in that. The way the law is written, there is a judgment to be made. I'm a little surprised that in making the judgment, Jair Marufo didn't go have a look at the monitor to have all the information to make the judgment. I'm a little surprised that part didn't happen. It feels like that's the whole point of having a video assistant referee, is to have all of the information and then you make the call that you see. And if he had looked at it and made the same call that he did, maybe we're having a little bit different conversation. Maybe we're not. I don't know. Maybe it's just a different shade of the conversation. I'm not sure. But that play, that decision, which is a difficult one, it's not cut and dried. It's not, for me, anything like the decision not to red card Nicolas Figal, for example, or the decision not to red card Yamil Assad, which didn't impact that match. It's not like those for me. It's not like the decision not to give a penalty to Adam John. Those feel more cut and dried to me. This one is in a very difficult decision the way the law is written. So we'll leave that to the side. We can disagree with it, but it's not as egregious in that they got it 100% wrong. No, I don't think that's the case, because there is an explanation for why they got it the way they did. That is valid. I disagree with that explanation thoroughly, but it's a valid explanation for why they called it that way. None of that decision with that goal does not supersede the fact that the way the game played out, Atlanta United didn't create enough chances. Now, where the goal happened definitely helped the Red Bulls. Of course, you get a goal early in the second half. They're a team that's based on defense. They're going to get destructive. They're going to be able to do what they want to do. It makes things easier for them. There's no question about that. The timing of it, obviously, it changes the way the game plays out. But Atlanta was not dangerous enough in the attack. They had a very good 45 minutes. The opening 45, I thought, was very good. There wasn't a lot to show for it. There needed to be more to show for that 45, because ultimately it didn't matter, right? Because you have a goal that goes against you. Now, the way the goal goes against you is also a problem before you get to the goal. And if you haven't seen, Matt Doyle, I think, posted it late Saturday night, and he nailed it on this. I've said it many times. I want to always remind it when some stuff like this comes up. Matt is really good at what he does at MLSsoccer.com. I don't always like his strategy of poking the bear and the trolling side of it. That's a different conversation than the content. He nails it on this situation because it had happened earlier in the match, too. On goal kicks, now you can drop your center backs into the box, right? You can play short. You can work up your play a little bit different way. That means your outside backs push up very high. Okay, all that's good. The problem is when you have your center backs back, you opt not to play to them, and you opt to go longer. If you go long into the other half, okay, you're playing it ahead of everybody in front of you. You've got your whole team behind the ball at that point if it's a turnover. Cool. If you play it into the area that Atlanta did twice, where you're playing it into your own half in the middle, what happens? Matt points this out. He shows you the breakdown very well. Your central mids are up high. Your outside backs are up high. If you turn it over there, you have two center backs behind the ball, and everybody else is in a race. That's a situation that can't happen. If you're going to go long after you drop your center backs into the box and you split your team in that way, you've got to go long. You can't go into that middle area that Atlanta does a lot, but they usually do it out wide because it's less risky. If you overhit it, it's out for a throw. No big deal. No big loss. If you mishit it in the middle, you're going to get a counter very quickly rammed down your throat, especially against a team like the Red Bulls. It had happened once and you weren't punished for it. You were punished the second time because Brad Gazan had to make a big save, goes out for the corner, Red Bulls score. That's another one of those mistakes. Look, it's a little bit more complicated mistake than some of the set piece and restart mistakes we've seen, but that's a mistake. And that happens and that hurts you, and that's what ultimately concedes a goal here. Other things about the game before I get John's thoughts. Marcelino Moreno, really good 45. Didn't look like the same in the second half. I wondered with his lack of match fitness when he came back after cooling down if he would be able to get back to that gear. He struggled to. That hurts you a little bit, but I liked what I saw with him. I liked what I saw with Jurgen Damm in the first 45 as well. I think he brought a spark. You're still trying to figure out what you can do up top. John Gallagher, Adam John are very different kinds of players. I think Gallagher might be more effective coming off of a wide position. It just frees him up a little bit more. You know, going up against Tim Parker and Amro Tarek, not a great matchup for John Gallagher. He didn't really impact the match too much early on, didn't impact the match enough overall. Franco Escobar was outstanding. Escobar had his best performance in an Atlanta United shirt, in my opinion. The conversation long-term now about Franco Escobar has to include center back. And he said that day one. When we met him, day one, he said he's a center back, not a right back. He had played more right back at that point coming into Atlanta. So it's not like Tata Martino and Frank de Boer and Stephen Glass have all not understood what his position is. He played more right back at Newell's Old Boys before he came here, but he did play some center back. And he's said, again, day one, that he's a center back who can play right back. He showed why he's a good center back on Saturday. And it's something you have to consider. You know, is he the best partner for Miles Robinson? Where does Fernando Meza fit into that? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that right now. But that gives a different wrinkle to what this roster can look like going forward with Franco Escobar at center back. That allows you to play Brooks Lennon at right back. That allows you to play Jurgen Damm at right wing and get difference makers on the field. Those were the things that stood out to me in this game. You didn't do enough to capitalize on the advantages you had in the first 45. You needed to get more out of your first 45 where you started well, and you did not. And when you don't, one mistake, one weird thing like this goal, which is brilliantly taken by Caden Clark. Now we see why the Red Bulls have been chasing him for a while. He played for the Red Bulls too. He was technically, for some really stupid reason, under the rights of Minnesota, even though he never played for a Minnesota youth club. Made no sense. It was a really dumb thing, and that's one of the major things that MLS has to clear up. But it shows you why the Red Bulls organization paid Minnesota for those rights, stopped fighting it, and just paid the money, got him signed. He's a top player. He's a player that will have some potential for them to go over to Europe in the Red Bull organization. Beautiful goal from him. He had 3 goals and 5 assists in like 11 games for Red Bulls 2 this year. Really good young player to watch. Red Bulls did what they do. Outside of that, they did what they do. I mean, they didn't dominate the game. They were themselves, which is very difficult. You give them a lead, it's even more difficult. First goals mean so much more this season than ever before. You can't concede first. That's what happens to you. What do you think, John?
No, I agree on your assessment of Marcelino Moreno. My biggest question is, are we going to have to now start a nutmeg meter when it comes to Marcelino with what we were able to see?
Hey, that was my line.
I'm right there with you. Right there with you. Start a nutmeg meter. I also enjoyed Jurgen Damm. Jurgen Damm got 1 nutmeg in as well, but him backtracking defensively, which we knew that he could do with his time at Liga MX, it was great to see that. Franco Escobar, for me, man of the match. You look at what he is now doing when he's put in that center back position, not afraid to go in and slide tackle. I want to say there were at least 3 or 4 instances of that where you see no fear in Franco Escobar wanting to go in and challenge and make sure that he can try to get the ball away from the opposition. We're just seeing that over and over and over again, and that's really fun to see. I'm glad that you mentioned the Brad Guzan introducing the ball back in, because I did notice that on those 2 occasions, and I'm glad that you went into that for me as well. But, yeah, I mean, Red Bulls did what Red Bulls do. When you got a lead and it's not a surprise. Although there were instances where I was surprised where defensively they weren't doing that full court, for using a basketball analogy. They weren't pressing all the way full court. It was more like a half court.
That was early, though. And that's so much of that is because you don't have the legs. You just don't. You can't go chase everything, consistently playing 3 times a week. But early on, they were playing more in a middle block. Later, they actually pressed a little bit higher and were more disruptive when they brought some subs on. But early, first half, and maybe that's why Atlanta had a little bit better of the play. Atlanta handled where Red Bulls tried to trap more in the middle third than press.
Yeah. But no, completely agree with your assessments on Moreno and Damm and Escobar. And like I said, I'm glad you went through the Brad Guzan element with it as well. But no, right there with you on all of those points. So obviously disappointing result, 1-0. But when the Red Bulls got a lead, they just clamped it down and did what they do.
Yeah, they clamped. I want to make it clear because most of the times when we say clamp it down, that means park the bus. They didn't do anything like that. They just play their defensive game because, look, if you're based on defense, and the Red Bulls' whole style is based off not having the ball,
right? When
you are a team in that kind of personality, you get the first goal, you're very, very comfortable. If you're a team that is based on having the ball and you get that first goal and you want to clamp it down or defend or whatever, that can be a little different for you. For Red Bulls, it's comfortable. You had 10 matches over the weekend. 8 of them were won by the team that scored first. The 2 that were not were Vancouver coming back on Real Salt Lake, which was strange, and Sporting Kansas City at home after conceding to Nashville coming back, and Nashville had a red card as well in that, so that might have played into it a little bit there. So I don't know. This is something that I'm not sure if Johannes is listening to us this morning, but I would love to find out, and I just need to do the math on it, if the first goal is more important in 2020 than it usually is. My gut feeling is yes. I feel like the numbers for teams who score first are better than they've ever been. I'm assuming because of the fitness issues. I'm assuming because of the number of games in a short period of time, et cetera. But I'd like to find that out. I need to do some math on it. I can't remember which game it was I was listening to last night that the team that conceded first, whenever they conceded first, did not win. And that's a pretty common statistic around the league right now. Okay, so that's the basics for today. Kevin Egan will be joining us in about 15 minutes. Jessica Charman at 10 o'clock. So I want to get into a couple of the tweets that we've had. And I want to I'm going to save this one because it's the referee side of things. So you start with wherever you want to go first, John.
Okay. Since we covered the goal, a lot of folks wanted to talk about the goal.
We're going to cover the goal a lot more. Yeah. I just, because I guess the way to try to throw shade, however you want, is to say that you can't complain about things. You can't say that, well, there's been a lot of questionable decisions that have gone against Atlanta this season, which there have, to say that you haven't caught a break. You can't say those things because those are not allowed. I want to make it clear. This is a judgment call. I disagree with the judgment. I've read some past precedent stuff, and we'll get into that. Sharif Solomon made a great point on Twitter, and we'll get into that a little bit later. I've read all of it. I understand the line of thinking. I still completely disagree with it. And that's okay. I could be completely wrong here. It's my interpretation of it. I'm not a certified referee. I guess maybe that gives you a different viewpoint. All that's fine. But it was a huge deal in the game. It was not a cut and dried situation. I disagree with the idea that you can't complain about it. You can't say anything about it. I thoroughly disagree with it. It's a talking point. It's a flashpoint in the game. Brad Guzan doesn't just get mad because he conceded a goal. He gets mad because he felt like a player affected his ability to make a save because he was in an offside position. And I agree with him. Stephen Glass doesn't just get mad because the team conceded a goal. He gets mad because of the nature of it. These aren't just sour grapes. And look, if that's the fun way we want to play things and when we want to throw shade at people, oh, that's good. That's fine. That's fine. No problem. Just don't ever complain about a referee ever again because you can't say that others can't do that. That's the thing. I agree that Jair Marufo is one of the best referees in this league. I've always said that. I still think that. He calls the game in a very consistent way. This is different from all that. This is a decision that I don't like the way it was judged. And I don't think it's the correct way that it should be judged. Because I feel like there was a definite advantage gained from a player being in an offside position in the 6 on a shot. It did affect the goalkeeper. It has to. You know he's there. You don't know if he's onside or offside because you're the goalkeeper. You're not worrying about that at that point. But you know he's there and you know it could redirect off. So we'll get into all that more as we go. But the idea that you can't talk about it, stop, please. Go, please read or talk to anybody who follows any team in the world when a goal like this is scored. And Liverpool, Bayern Munich, Boca Juniors, Santos, pick a team and go find a goal like this, and you will see lots of talk about referees. Mm-hmm. You will see lots of talk about referees in these situations. It happens. That's why we do these things. We're talking through it. Okay, let's go on.
All right. And I admit I'm going to be going back and forth from after the match to this morning because of what people are saying in the timeline. Chris Hutchison this morning. The first half was without question the best first half I've seen us play in what seems like forever. My perception is that there's much better organization and cohesion during the run of play, and that on balance, the team is improving.
I don't know if I'd say it's the best 45 they've played. It was a good 45, no question. Moreno can elevate things for this team. I think they looked sharper when he was at his best. No question about that. You are getting more organized because you've had time to work with Stephen Glass. I mean, even though you're not getting a ton of training sessions at the moment, you're getting to have the video sessions. You're having the conversations with Stephen and Henry Apalou and Rob Valentino and the rest of the staff. It's not just they walked in the door and now they're trying to have the team play the way they want. They've had time to work through it. And it's showing. This is a different kind of team now than it was when Stephen Glass took over. It's a very different team than it was in the MLS's back tournament. I feel like the level of play is far better than it was in the MLS's back tournament. I feel like it's gotten better consistently, not game to game, because, again, the things that are going to affect it, and this is what's hard, is you get that balance of cohesion with fatigue. And you can be, cohesive, and you can have a plan, and you can be organized. Those things fall apart not because you're disorganized or because, the game plan isn't strong, because you get tired. That has a factor in all of this. That's what's so hard to judge everything right now. That's why Taylor Twellman, for the first time, and he admitted it last night on ESPN, he was waffling on, was it fair for managers to lose their jobs this season? Because you've got so many outside factors that are affecting it. You can be the best coach, you can have it super organized, and things will fall apart because your right back's played 900 minutes and his legs are about to fall off.
Yep.
Like, that's going to happen. So it's a challenge. I do think overall the last run of games is better than Stephen Glass's first run of games because he's had time to work on things. All of that is better than it was at the MLS's back tournament. And that's what we're kind of judging through all this right now. So, yeah, I think it's definitely heading in the right direction. But it's not good enough yet because you're still making some mistakes that are costing you games.
Daniel Price, my thoughts. I hate the Red Bulls and everything about them. Why is it there is literally something controversial in every single match involving us? Congratulations to the Red Bulls. You won when you shouldn't have.
Congratulations to the Red Bulls because they know who they are. And they're not based on players. They're based on a style of play that is designed to get the best out of a lesser player pool. It just is. They're not the same team that they were with Sasha Kljestan, with Bradley Wright Phillips, with Dax McCarty. I can go on and on through the names. They're not that team anymore. They're different. They're also always going to be a team that wants to develop players. They're going to play young guys because they're going to play into the system. This system is comparable to what you're going to see at Salzburg, what you're going to see at Leipzig. So it makes sense from a club philosophy perspective. All of that is a completely valid way to build a team. It's a different way to build a team. For me, it's more robotic. It's less expressive. It's less creative. And I think if you've ever listened to the show, you know which way I'm going to fall on what kind of soccer I like personally. I like the creativity. I like the flair. I like players with personality. The Red Bull system is built to not necessarily have much of that. Jesse Marsch had to adapt the system to make it work for Sasha Kljestan, for Bradley Wright Phillips. They didn't play in the same way exactly. They took the pressing elements and they put it in a different formation to get the best out of the players he had. Now, you're fitting players into the system, and that's what works for them. They're not going out and spending big money, although they did on Kaku. And, I mean, you could argue that was a good expenditure or not a good expenditure. I don't know if they've gotten their full value from him, but they went out and they spent on him. Outside of that, they're not doing the Thierry Henry, Rafa Marquez, Tim Cahill kind of signings anymore. They're bringing guys up through the second team. They're signing guys that they think can make the jump to Europe. I wonder if they'll start to incorporate the Brazilian team into that mix as well, because I don't know where they fall in the Red Bull hierarchy yet. We'll have to wait and see. Why there's always controversial things with Red Bulls, some of it's just luck. I mean, some of it's down to the way that they play. They're combative. They're going to cause friction in the way that they play. You got two teams that approach the game in a different way, and that's been consistent for Atlanta, whether it's Tata Martino or Frank de Boer or Stephen Glass. Atlanta wants to play. They want to, get forward in numbers. They're not basing everything they do off of defending. They're basing it off what they do with the ball. So that's going to create a good style for a contentious match, and that's what you get with these two. But Red Bulls have had Atlanta's number in the regular season all the time. And that's something that Atlanta has to be able to play them, cut out the mistakes, and not lose their heads a little bit when Red Bulls do start to take control and do start to knock guys around and bully the game a bit.
Daniel also said after the match, he said, the Red Bulls are a bunch of cheats. I've never been more mad or frustrated than when we play them.
No, they're not a bunch of cheats. They're a frustrating team to play, absolutely, because they are physical. They are disruptive. They destroy a game to me. They don't come to play a beautiful game. They come to destroy you from playing whatever you want to play. That's not the game that I'm going to turn on if I've got a bunch of random games to choose from. I'm not picking that one. But they're not cheats. There's nothing they're doing that is cheating. They're physical, and they take full advantage of it. And I think they enjoy that side of the game. That's fine. That's a strategy. It works for them to a point. It's worked for them against Atlanta to a great point.
So basically what you're saying is Red Bulls are like the soccer version of the Borg.
You're going to have to explain that one because I don't know what you're getting at.
Just with Star Trek, basically, it's all about the collective, and they just work as a single entity toward wanton destruction as one unit. There's no individuality. There's no personality. They are there basically to just impose their will upon you and take over that way.
Okay, that's a good explanation.
So as you're laying this all out, that's what I wrote down. I literally wrote down soccer Borg.
Okay. I don't know if that's going to stick, but okay.
Old Swarthy.
What's up, Old Swarthy?
Yeah. Who cares? It's pathetic. We have to rely on a dubious offside call to draw 0-0 at all.
Who cares? Sorry. I mean, you can talk about a dubious offside call all day because that's what we do. We talk about soccer. We've got to eliminate that mentality, y'all. Like, it's a big point in the game. It is. There's no way around it. But what Ellsworthy's saying is what we said off the top, and it's accurate. You need to be playing better so you're not into these situations. Of course, you can't have these turnovers. You got to create more chances. All these things are accurate. There's nothing wrong with that. But this idea that you can't talk about a very controversial call, I'm sorry, it's foolish, and I don't understand it. It's not, and I don't know if it's coming from just I don't know what it's coming from, to be perfectly honest, because, man, go ask a Premier League fan base about different referees, and they will tell you every single time that referee made a call against them. It's not an American thing, so it's not like, okay, the Eurosnobs are going to be against that because they talk about referees all the time. It's not a Latin thing because Latins talk about referees all the time. The referees are part of the game, and they do affect the way it plays out. And if this isn't called, if this is called back, it's a draw. From what we know, we don't know how the rest of the second half would have played out. That's the whole thing here. So it's absolutely worth talking about. I do not understand that mentality, and it's big here. Here, it's specifically around this stuff in Atlanta. I don't get it. You can't pin everything on the referees. Don't get me wrong. And I've never done that, and the people that I work with have never done that. But to say you can't talk about it, no, that's incorrect. Because last time I checked, the Falcons are probably still talking about Julio Jones getting dragged down in Seattle on a pass interference. Like, it happens in all sports. It's a big part of it. It didn't 100% lose the game for Atlanta. They didn't play well enough to win. Absolutely true. We don't know what that second half would have been without the goal. Part's also true. But you didn't get enough to show for your first half, where you played really, really well. So and it's nothing against Old Swarthy. I totally understand his mentality here because the team did not play well enough to definitively win. The margin is very thin. Some of that's down to player absence, it's down to schedule, all kinds of things. But the margin's thin, you do start to look at these little things. And the referees have been strange this year. Very strange. There's been a lot of weirdness. Yep. It's something you have to talk about. All right. No. Stop. I told you what time we got stuff going on. What are you doing? Why are you doing jazz hands?
You wanted me to throw. I stopped.
You can't throw because I've got to do things over here. There's nowhere to throw things. I've got to take care of stuff and set it up, which means I've got to talk to the virtual producer.
Who is?
Steven today.
Oh, we're back to Steve today?
Yeah, Steve's back. He slotted in today, so he's got to do a couple of things. We got to buy him a little bit of time so we can get Kevin Egan on the line, and we can talk further about this.
All right.
But yeah, there's no throwing to anything because it's going to take a minute. We're not that smooth, John. You should know this by now. It's only been 4 years.
I know, really?
Uh-oh, Kevin Egan's unavailable. I am sure he has forgotten his Skype handle again. Let's see if we can find him a different way. Yeah, see, these are the fun things about it when you're trying to sort this stuff out.
So then let me read Herschel Skywalker after the match while you're trying to find Kevin.
Go for it.
The Dogs are doing pretty well, and the Braves aren't terrible. I'm going back to that. It sucks to watch Arthur Blank's mediocre teams either invest in some players and show some heart or sell. At ATO UTD doesn't even have a real coach. What a joke.
Whoa. Okay, go back to Herschel while I'm sorting out Kevin here.
Okay, Herschel Skywalker. The Dogs are doing pretty well, and the Braves aren't terrible. I'm going back to that. It sucks to watch Arthur Blank's mediocre teams either invest in some players and show some heart or sell. At ATL UTD doesn't even have a real coach. What a joke.
Okay, Herschel, my friend, invest in some players. Atlanta United spent more money on transfers than anybody else. Like, I'm sorry, I got nothing on that. That doesn't even make any sense to me. The Falcons have invested in players. That doesn't even make any sense to me. You can talk about the coaching decisions, but Atlanta United moved on from Frank DeBoer really quickly. And on the other side, yeah, they held on to Dan Quinn too long. I totally agree with that. But stop. Arthur Blank's the best thing in sports that's happened in this city. Talk about investment? Come on now. You can be frustrated about results, but there's no lack of investment. You're looking for something to throw at that. That's not true. There's nothing to base that on. So stop that. You can be frustrated with the results all you want. You can be frustrated with decisions all you want. But lack of investment? No. Go look at the numbers. There's no way to argue that. All right, we're going to try Kevin again this way. Let's see if we get him here.
Okay.
I think we have Kevin Egan now.
Yay!
Good morning, gentlemen. How are
There he is. Oh, he's got video, too, so I got to pull up video.
He's in the fancy studio.
Yeah. All right, hold on. Kevin, I'm going to slide you in and slide me out so I can get this sorted out. I mean, go ahead and talk to us, but I'm going to do some production skills here.
How's the show going? How are you keeping, guys?
We're just talking about stuff. There's nothing big from the weekend to talk about. Pretty bland game, right?
Jason, I hope you've told everyone that I've been bothering you all weekend about this because
no, I haven't.
It's such a complex call for a lot of reasons. I think we'll get a chance to break it down, and I believe you've Jess on after me to give the goalkeeper perspective as well, which is very important here. I think that's crucially important that you hear from someone like Jess. I had a chance to catch up with Brad Gazan yesterday, and I wanted to get his perspective on it. Do we want to dive straight into the call? Is that what we want to get to? Sorry, I'm just taking this.
No, yeah, go for it. Let's do it.
It's what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put myself in the mind of the referee as well, and what the rule is on this, and then go through the verbiage and pretend I'm in a court of law, and figure out if I win or not. I don't know if we were to go to a court right now and debate this with Pro, I think they'd win. And I think when you go through the wording, we're not looking at line of sight here. This is an opponent's line of vision is now the wording that they use. Okay, so we're not talking about that. So it's not the same situation as the goal against the Red Bulls when Bradley Wright Phillips' goal last season was ruled out. It's not the same play at all. It's similar, but it's just not the same. It's a different bullet point. So we're going down to making an obvious action which clearly impacts on the ability of an opponent to play the ball. So, did Royer make an obvious action? I think he did.
Yes.
I think he did make an obvious action. I think by jumping out of the way of the ball. Here's why I'd say it's an obvious action. If Marcelino Moreno dummied the ball in the open field for Brooks Lennon, is that an obvious action to play the ball? I think it is. Mm-hmm. So he's not touching the ball, but he's making an obvious action. And I think by avoiding the ball, Royer's making an obvious action. The word that I think, if we were to ask a lawyer about this, the word that they would fall back on is ability. So did it impact on the ability of Brad to play the ball? I'm not so sure it did. And this is the one I keep going back on. I don't agree with it. I think if you're a goalkeeper, it puts you in an impossible situation. And Brad spoke to the linesman and the referee, and both were told that Royer is in an offside position. However, it doesn't impact you, and that's where Brad is saying, well, hang on, and he didn't say this, but from his perspective, he's saying, well, you guys aren't goalkeepers, and how are referees in a judgment call supposed to pretend that they understand how an elite goalkeeper who's been doing this all his career how his instincts work, how his mind works, what his periphery looks like.
That.
He's well aware. Brad told me he's well aware of where Royer is. Well aware. He sees Royer come across him. He, as far as he's concerned, Royer is in an onside position. So Royer could easily deflect that ball. Royer could play the ball. Royer gets out of the way, guys. Royer could easily, cushion that ball in if he turns his body quick enough. Now, it does come at him pretty fast. It was a beautiful volley. Let's take nothing away from Caden Clark here. Sensational hit from Clark. But I think this is absolutely worth discussing because we're all learning. As these rules change constantly, and his video review is not that old, we're still in the teething phase of the video assistant referee in the game of soccer. Whether we like it or not, we are. So it's worth discussing these things, and certainly as a commentator, when you're the first voice on that call, it makes it very difficult because you're trying to process an awful lot of things at the time. Even in the post-game show, Jason, I quickly questioned, like, hang on, did Bello play him onside? Did we miss this?
Yeah.
We had to look at a different angle just to make sure that George Bello wasn't playing Royer onside, which would have negated the whole conversation. But that's what I'm going back to now, and I received an email from Howard Webb, full disclosure, head of the Professional Referees Organization, explaining, and I'll read it out to you, explaining what he saw and what the Professional Referees Organization were going with. And he said, the goal looks good. Guzan can see the shot all the way. He dives early and isn't getting there. So there's no impact from Royer.
See, that last part, that's where I'm going to question it. He dives early. He doesn't dive early.
He doesn't dive early. He hesitates, correct. And also, he isn't getting there. How do you know?
Yeah, that's the issue I have. I'll tell you what, if this is the way it's going to be called, and look, this is the narrative that Howard, Jair Marufo, we can assume from Alan Kelly's involvement as the VAR here. I mean, he's, pro through and through here. So this is the narrative that has been established. This is how it's going to be called from here on out. So what do goalkeepers have to do in this situation? Dive into the player who's in an offside position. That's how you handle it, because then you bring them into the play. Go back to the Darlington Nagby goal that was ruled out when Joseph Martinez was in an offside position and Sean Johnson made contact with Joseph in that. You have to dive into Royer in that case if you're Brad Guzan. If that's the way it's going to be called, you have to try to initiate contact with the player who's in your six.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough because otherwise they're saying if that player is not in the line of sight between the ball and the goalkeeper, they can be there. And I disagree with that. I think it absolutely is an effect.
I keep going back to the wording though, Jason, and if like you say, they have their narrative, but if they're just sticking to the rules, I was speaking to Andres Cordero yesterday, play-by-play commentator for Inter Miami, an old beIN Sports colleague of mine, and we talked about this. And he made a great point in saying, like, a lot of the officials, like a lot of us in any walk of life or in any career, we may not be great communicators. So they may say certain things to players in the heat of the moment, but they've got their verbiage down in terms of the rules, and making an obvious action which clearly impacts on the ability of an opponent to play the ball. I just don't know what ability means. Does ability mean you have to be does ability mean like Royer was in the way between Guzan and the ball? Is that what ability means, and that he doesn't have the ability to get there because Royer's in the way? It's
I think it's vague by design because it allows interpretation. I mean, that's the point. Like when you go through the whole offside law, like that is the point that is open to interpretation here. That's it. So making an obvious action which clearly impacts the ability of an opponent to play the ball. For me, making the obvious action is being in that spot. The shot is at him. He is in a position that draws the goalkeeper's attention. There's just no way around that for me. So that's his action. Clearly impacts the ability of an opponent to play the ball. For me, and this is where I think Howard got it wrong, is Brad did not dive on contact. You see a hesitation when you look at it. That's where the VAR component, and that's probably my biggest disappointment with why it wasn't looked at by Jair Marufo on the field, because I felt like this did come down to interpretation beyond just was he in between the ball and the goalkeeper? Because if that's all we're going to judge on, then again, goalkeepers are kind of screwed here because there's nothing they can do. Because we talk about it, and I think we might have talked about it. I think it was on the phone; it wasn't on the broadcast. On free kicks, where goalkeepers are stuck on their line, and you see sometimes a free kick that curls in and it goes all the way into the goal. Nobody touches it because the goalkeeper is playing for a deflection. They have to hold their ground. That's exactly what Brad is in this position.
I had one a few years ago when I was commentating for Chicago at Red Bull Arena against the Red Bulls, against Luis Robles, and Harry Shipp curled the ball in toward Mike McGee. Mike McGee totally fakes out the goalkeeper. Mike McGee is in an offside position. He pretends he's going to go head it and then pulls out at the last second, making that obvious action. This is, not the reason why the rule was changed, but the rule has been changed since. And Luis Robles was caught flat-footed, expecting the header from Mike McGee. Brad's in a similar position, though. Mm-hmm. It's not as obvious an action as this, but knowing that Royer is the cheeky player that he is and a quality player, he could easily redirect that if he puts the side of his foot out, or by getting out of the way of that. That to me is playing the ball, and I will go back to a dummy in the middle of the field. You don't get an assist for a dummy, so maybe they'll make an argument to say, well, you didn't play the ball. But it's clearly a play of the ball. It's clearly impacting the opponents. And this one, when you have to get out of the way of the ball, for me, it's playing the ball, right? And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I look at this, and by not having any contact with the ball, to me, is irrelevant. You're still acting as the ball is a part of your universe.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm looking at this also. And I think that I agree with you guys. I think that Howard, in his email to you, Kevin, I think that Howard is off here. But I think that, to your point, Kevin, by not touching the ball, you can have just as much impact in playing the ball as by not doing it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, completely. John, by the way, you are the king of analogies, man. You are the king of analogies. Like, you're talking about universe now, and you're like, I love it, John.
He went Star Trek on me earlier, Kevin, and threw me off.
You went what, sorry?
Star Trek.
I said that the Red Bulls are like the soccer Borg.
I still don't know the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars.
I know just a little bit.
Just a little different. But the Borg is this unfeeling, unemotional, thinking of the collective kind of approach, and all they do is wanton destruction as a collective being. There's no personality. There's nothing there.
I'm going to tell Simon Borg you said that.
It's all good, brother. Bring it.
So what are your takeaways from the game? I was thinking about it yesterday, watching it back. The depth chart at centre-back is fascinating now. It really is. I don't know what the depth chart looks like. And I don't know if the team knows, because there's different guys just stepping up at different moments. But as of right now, if you had a power ranking, it's got to be Franco first. I'd say then Miles, then Anton, then Meza, maybe last out of the four. And it's no slide on him, really. It's just the way Franco played, and I think you have to have Miles when he's fully fit.
Yeah. I would probably go Miles first, Franco second, just because I think the ceiling is higher for Miles. But they're two different players, and I think they can complement each other really well. That's the thing about it, is that pairing can work well. Walks was kind of in the Miles role to a degree here, and look, that's a harder spot for him to be in. I think it's almost better when Walks has the game simpler as opposed to a player like Franco who was all over the place in a good way, in a very good way.
I think a frantic game suits Escobar.
Yeah.
And then you also have Miles looking a lot more comfortable on the left-hand side. It's something Gargan has been harping on. His passing out of the back on his left foot has improved dramatically. So I think that could be a pairing that we could see going forward. The other questions, right now, do you at times, it's again, no dig at all at John Gallagher, but do you go with a potential false nine if you can get some other key pieces back? And do you let someone like a Moreno operate a little bit further forward and drop into deeper spaces when he wants, and allow attacking midfielders get runs forward when you can get Osetu back and hopefully get Barco back as well?
It wouldn't be Moreno for me, because from what I've seen with him in interviews and what I saw from him at Lanús, he's better further back than further forward. That's where, we talked about it going into the MLS's back tournament. That's where I thought Pitti could end up being that solution like we saw in Mexico, where he played as a 9 as opposed to playing out wide or playing as a 10. Now, you don't necessarily have a perfect fit for that. The wild card off the top of my head, and it's down to a little bit of his ability in the air, even though he's not the biggest, could be Brooks Lennon, depending on how you shape the back line if you want to play him in that role. Because he's played as a forward in youth national teams. It's about the same as Gallagher, though.
Yeah.
It's not much different.
And the other one is how long can you get a consistent tune out of Jeff Laurentowicz?
Yeah.
Playing full 90 like this. That has to be something we think about going into Wednesday now. And Jeff, again, fair play to him. 37 years young, looking like he's 21. Six straight starts.
Crushing it.
He's been remarkable. So, yeah, another loss, unfortunately, but I really didn't think it was going to end up that way, Jason. At halftime, I watched our show back, and I thought you did wonderfully. By the way, I think we should point that out. You jumped in so seamless, and you made it look easy from first second on air. So well done. But also at halftime, we were so positive. I was as positive as I've been all season, quite honestly. I didn't think the team played well in the first 2 games of the year, winning both. I didn't think there was a consistent rhythm to the team, and they were allowing the opponents back into the game far too easily. That first half, I thought the team looked in complete control, and just didn't create those gilt-edge opportunities that you need to put the game away. But hopefully that'll come.
Yeah, I think some of it with Moreno, it's down to just getting sharp as well. But I liked him. I thought he was a big addition, and Heineman got better because of him. Dom's inclusion was big. You just didn't have, I don't think you had more than 60 minutes at top level with that group, though. And you probably didn't even have that. I think you probably just had the 45, to be perfectly honest. And second half, we don't know because the goal happened so early and the game changed. But I don't know how much more they could have impacted the game in the second half.
Yeah. No, I agree. So we'll see. Tough one Wednesday evening. I'd be happy if we never played into Miami ever again.
Yeah, I'm about tired of those guys.
This is the 3rd or 4th time?
78th time.
Oh, man. It's got to be the 4th, I think.
A draw and 2 losses, yeah.
Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Kevin, about, and now that Jason has seen it as well, hanging out there at the middle of the adult table for the pre and the post game show, the difficulty of doing TV production in this current environment. What has it been like for you and Dan and Jill and now Jason to put this product together to where it looks as seamless as it does? I
mean, for us, quite honestly, there's not that much out of the ordinary because of the tremendous work done by everyone else behind the scenes. The production staff have been absolutely amazing. Producer Eric, director Tom, everybody involved in that show. We get to the stadium, John, in the same way you do. We head through the security gates. The staff there are as friendly as you could possibly imagine at a time like this, which is just difficult. They'd prefer to have crowds rolling in, and they're wonderful. We get in, you forget your mask, for example, you get yourself a new one. The only time I forgot my mask, Jason, was when I bumped into you, and I found my wife's skin mask, so I'm rocking a leopard skin looking into the stadium. And they hand you out a new one every time at the stadium if you want. But you get up there, we've got the plexiglass between us. Plexiglass between Jason and I when we're calling the game the other night. It doesn't affect us in any way. I could still see your body language. You could still look across at me if need be.
I thought that would be more of an effect. It wasn't.
No, once you're in the game, you're in the game, right? You kind of riding the wave of emotions of the game. But you could always look across at me. You couldn't give me a slap. Or you couldn't, sometimes with Argan, and I'm sure I may have done this to you before.
Yeah, I think you smacked me at one point.
Did I?
I think so. I don't even remember what it was.
In this game?
Yeah, there was something, I think, in the first half.
Oh, wow. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. I don't remember what it was.
Figure out how you reach around the plexi to still smack him. That's an end run.
No, the plexi's not, to that degree. It's not between, that part. So, I mean, I can't remember what it was that happened. I don't know. There might have been something that happened off the ball. I don't remember what it was. Anyway.
Yeah, and that's it's a great view from that booth. It's phenomenal. Yeah. It really is. It's just such a dream to call a game from there every single time. But all in all, John, I would say our job is made easy because of the wonderful work of other people, quite honestly. Jason, I'd say you agree with me on that.
Yeah, I thought it would be harder. I mean, this is only the second time that I've done it, and Columbus, on the road's a whole different conversation anyway. But I thought it'd be harder because of all these different restrictions and just how you'd have to deal with things. But I mean, it really wasn't, and it's down to everybody who was making this happen, even beyond Eric and Tom, like all the people who were just making our lives easy. Up there and making sure we were safe too. And that's the biggest thing is everything was handled. And I didn't feel in any way like weird because there were a bunch of people in the room. I wasn't worried about any of that. I mean, it was safe. It was easy to do our jobs. Made it easy for me sliding in and figuring it out on the fly. So that was really, really helpful. And Kevin and I told Jillian the same thing. Like, you guys just make it so easy for me just to come in and do what I do. I appreciate that. It's not. It's
you do what you do, Jason. It's not us. But thank you, appreciate that. But the other name which we should shout out in case he's listening, Patrick Rosselli, the stage manager, floor manager.
Yes,
is one of the best, and he goes out of his way, and he'll always try and keep his distance, but always go out of his way to do everything he can to help make sure that the show goes well. So I had a lot of fun with you next to me in the booth.
How many Godfathers did you drop?
I don't know if I dropped any.
I don't think you dropped one on air at all. No. You tried to get Jillian to do it, and she wouldn't go for it.
No, I don't think I said it on there. I should have.
See, I had
no,
over
it's fine.
2.5.
Yeah, John would have missed that over.
Yeah,
I had one in pregame, one at first half, and one in second half. I had the over at 2.5.
I don't think it happened at all.
No, I'm pretty sure. I'd remember that. I got to
work on that.
I'm sorry, John. John, you got to text me or send me a DM on Twitter or something. Let me know what you think.
Godfather.
Inside betting. Yeah,
exactly.
Kevin,
yeah, seriously.
Okay,
absolutely before you go, Kevin, we got a question from one of our listeners on Twitch. Bernd Dursberger said, and I'm not sure how much you've had a chance to see, but in general, how do you compare the entertainment?
Swap my name for Bernd Dursberger.
What's that?
That's a class name.
Oh yeah,
Bernd Dursberger.
Bernd is our Bundesliga correspondent here on Soccer Down Here. We've learned. How do you compare the entertainment value of the South American qualifiers versus the European qualifiers? He feels like the European ones are so much more boring.
Oh, completely. Yeah. It's not even close. The only qualifiers I really have a genuine interest in watching, obviously when the US are involved, CONCACAF, the European game is never as exciting during it. Just the way it's set up. You could have San Marino at home. And then you could be looking at the schedule, for example, all right, this is exactly the amount of points I should pick up. Whereas in South America, it's just absolutely wild. I love the CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers. Yeah. I had a big interest the other night. I didn't pay for it because I can't afford to right now. Quite honestly, we've been out of work for so long that I'm not paying $30 for a game. I can't justify that to my wife and to our family. So it's something I was following closely. I was watching Colombia and the impact that I was looking at the standings last night. Like Everton and Atalanta are both perfect in the league so far. 100% records, scoring goals for fun. Everton have a +8 goal differential. Atalanta a +13. And it's their cafeteros doing the business, James Rodriguez and Yerry Mina, and then obviously Muriel and Zapata. So they're such a fun team to watch. And I always kind of jump on the Colombia bandwagon a little bit because they're so colorful, they're so fun, they always bring so much to a World Cup that I really want this team to make it, obviously, and then have fun and go far after that.
Yeah, see, so Kevin mentioned San Marino, so what do? I grab my San Marino national team hat right there.
Oh, John, you're random in the most brilliant way. I love it.
Every obscure team or national team or anything, John's got it somewhere.
I am the patron saint of the underdog, and when it comes to FIFA ratings, you can't get any more underdog than San Marino, brother.
Love it, John. If you could pick one team that may miss out that you'd expect to qualify in South America, Jason, who are you picking?
Because somebody always does, because it's the toughest, and it's not going to be like this ever again because of the expanded World Cup. Like, this is right now 4 out of 10 who get in, 5 with the play-in round. Typically, the South American team will win that, but not always. So, you have to look at...
Can we, I'm really sorry to interrupt.
No.
Can we point out that those latter fixtures, we need to keep an eye for... I think, I'm just predicting this, that the last couple of games in this, may get squashed because we've already missed the March window. We've missed the September window. There's doubts now about the Copa America next year. Now, money reasons will mean it will be played. You can be sure of that. But I would say, given the way COVID has impacted everything around the world, and is COVID's obviously getting worse at the minute, that they may need to go to a points per game, like a lot of leagues around the world. And that could impact the final few games. So if you're in Argentina, for example, and you start with Ecuador, then Bolivia, you're at a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, you should be. Although going to Bolivia is not fun. So we'll see how Argentina does tomorrow with that. You know, I look at Ecuador as one that I think is a really good emerging team. They've got so many young talents coming through with Independiente del Valle producing such great talent. You know, are they the odd ones out this time instead of, you know, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Uruguay maybe as the 4? I mean, if those were the 4, I don't think anybody would be surprised. And that's leaving Ecuador, Chile, Peru to battle it out. And Venezuela, potentially. If they get everybody back next year, if Joseph comes back, for example, and gets that form that I don't know if he's ever really hit for Venezuela consistently, this is the best Venezuelan generation we've ever seen, and they might miss out again.
Yeah, they're still young, too. They really are. I'd love to see Peru get in.
I would too.
I'm kind of maybe a little secret Peru fan as well. Because,
Ricardo Gareca, love what he does.
Yeah, I've always put him down as one of the ones that if an Atlanta United scouting network were to look at South America and pick your top 5 coaches, for me, Ricardo Gareca would absolutely be there because he would just bring such exciting soccer to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and the way they play too. They're always fun to watch. The players they have, I think they play beyond their means. Peru. So we shall see.
John Nason, our resident Coventry City supporter, wanted me to ask you if you thought that Villa are contenders or pretenders.
We're not contenders. You know what we're saying though?
We're survivors.
I'll say that there's no way that Villa are getting relegated this year, which is wonderful. You're going to clip this. You're going to remind me of this in May. There's no way Villa are going to get relegated. Watch, Villa will pick up 1 point now before Christmas. I think that Dean Smith's done a tremendous job, so I'm happy that there's a team in the Midlands doing well, John. In your face.
Totally clipping that. We're going to use that later.
Yes.
Well, cheers, guys. Pleasure chatting with you.
Always good, my friend. It was fun Saturday night. Thanks for the hospitality.
Yeah, no, please. Thanks for joining, and we shall chat to you soon.
Yes, we will.
We got to get Egan to wear Kangles from now on.
I had a couple extra with me just in case he got a little squirrely and wanted to do it.
They're called paddy hats, and I have a couple.
Yeah?
In Ireland, we call them paddy hats.
Paddy hats. Because I've heard Newsboy. I mean, I think everybody calls them something different. Kangle's the brand, and that's become kind of the...
Paddy cap, actually.
Paddy cap?
Yeah.
Paddy cap.
Caps.
When I get my green one, I'll call it a paddy cap for you.
There you go.
There you go.
I don't have a green one yet.
Paddy's Day, I'll always be wearing one. I was wearing one back in Ireland, actually, a fair bit, so... Yeah, we should, Jason. We look like a pair out of what's it called? What's the show? Why am I drawing a blank on the show name? Peaky Blinders.
Peaky Blinders. Yeah, that's what I thought you were going with.
I know it's early, Egan. Come on, get your coffee.
I've had to clean the coffee machine today, so I haven't had coffee yet.
Oh, come on now.
All right, guys. Great chatting with you.
Thanks, Kevin.
See you guys. All the best.
Kevin Egan joining us this morning.
Oh, that's fun.
As we figure out how to...
Producer Steve.
Yeah, Producer Steve's got some work to do.
All right. Producer Steve.
All right. I kicked Kevin out from the call. Sorry, Kevin. That's the only way I could do that. Now, Producer Steve has to get Jessica Charman on the line so we can get a goalkeeper's perspective, along with many other things, on what happened on Saturday. We've got bots hanging out in the Twitch pitch. I mean, it's a crazy Monday morning. We'll see if we can get Jess in here with no problems. But it's a Monday, so there probably will be problems. Producer Steve might not come back. Not Coach Steve. Coach Steve is always welcome. Producer Steve, I don't know. As John mutes himself as he's typing And we can't get Jess on the phone. Great.
Come on, text Jess. Jess, where are you?
Hold on. Mizano says my cap is also called a Scully cap. I thought that was more of like a...
I thought it was more like a beanie kind of thing.
Yeah, I would have went more beanie with that, but I could be off there. Now
So virtual producer Steve is 1 for 2.
Yes, we're efforting. Give me a minute. Steve's working.
Okay. We do have a lot of folks who have chimed in this morning, so it's been thanks to everybody who has been interacting so far. And we figured that one particular topic would take a whole lot of time and issue.
Yes.
But, yeah. When Kevin mentioned San Marino, I knew where the hat was, and I had to go grab it real quick.
That's funny.
Oh yeah. Hey. Biggest thing for San Marino, you just want to make sure they score a goal because they're quite offensively deficient in the international scope of things. Their goal difference in the European theater is minus 11 billion.
It's funny. I thought Kevin would be the one with Skype issues. It's actually Jess. We're trying to get her logged back in here. So we are working. Yeah, Coach Steve, we're not going to have a virtual producer, Steven, back. I think it's going to be Mateo, as Katie Weaver wants, because, man, this is not going well for virtual producer Steven.
The Colonel says that Egan brought his A game this morning.
Egan always brings his A game. Egan's got the soccer bunker set up. That's very nice.
That's pretty sweet that he's got that squared away for the show.
Yeah, it's a good setup. I don't have that much space, so I have to make do with what I have, and my whiteboard has to be in there, and my new Cheez-It box from MLS is also in there.
Where did you get the Cheez-It box?
I got the Cheez-It box with a whole bunch of goodies from one of our listeners. So, nice. I like Cheez-Its, so that was awesome. But the Edelsteins gave me that because it had the MLS stuff on it. There's like a giveaway contest for it and all this stuff. Okay, I think we've got Jess ready to roll. Let's get her on the call now. And
come on, Mateo.
And it's not Mateo, it's Steven, and he finally got it done. What's up, Jess?
I didn't know if you swapped him out.
Hello. I am here. I was so engaged in that fantastic conversation that I forgot that I needed to log into Skype. And then by the time I was like, what is my password, guys? So I had the quick reset, but when you're so engaged in the first hour of the show, sometimes these things happen.
It gets a little crazy sometimes. This is why we need more than virtual producers to get things done too, because then it's a little bit easier to do the show when we're not battling with all of it. But we got it done. That's what we do around here. We figure it out one way or another, and we got to figure out what happened on this goal. And I need a goalkeeper's perspective because I was trying to defend #GKUnion with the way I was describing what happened. I was trying to give the goalkeepers more credit than the referees were giving them in the situation. Was I wrong? Did I have anything going in my benefit here?
No, I think you guys did a good job. And actually, I'm really glad I listened to the first part because hearing what Howard Webb said was actually quite disappointing. About saying his judgment on Brad Guzan was that he would have never got there and that he dove early. Because I'm not sure what clip he is watching or what his experience in goalkeeping is regarding the technique that Guzan has when it comes to diving. Because I've watched it back, and I watched it back a couple of times this morning after hearing that comment, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just blinded by the goalkeeper union. And for me, the more you watch it back, the more you see a slight stutter step as the shot's taken. And then his dive isn't a free dive. It's a slower dive. And I know I'm going to eat my words here because I've been critical of Brad's reaction times in the past, but you can see he is holding his step. He does not step fully into a dive. A goalkeeper is taught to explode into a save. He doesn't explode because he knows if he explodes and then there's a deflection, he's going to have dove past it. It's one of those things where he has to hold. And then on the flip side, people will argue, well, didn't he know the guy was offside? Well, you're taught to play to the whistle anyway. You're taught to save the ball.
There's no way you can know he's offside.
No, his best opportunity is to try and make that save. The only way he's going to do that is by holding his save, by hoping that he can anticipate. He shouldn't anticipate. He has to react to that touch. So he has to hold for as long as possible. And then just away from the whole save, it affects his play, because by someone being stood there, even though it's not in his sight line, yeah, I've seen the angle. Yeah, he doesn't impede his vision of the shot. We're not arguing that. He impedes his decision and his technique in saving the shot and his communication. He's probably, based on my experience, I'm talking to my defenders at this point. Hey, player on my left, be aware, left shoulder. I'm judging and communicating, and there's so much going through your brain, and the speed that this happens. It's crazy to me that they can say it doesn't make a difference. That said, it's not a call we always expect to have, but it's a call that with the increase of VAR, you would have thought they might look at the screen to see it again, because as we've mentioned, we're making these comments off of seeing 3 or 4 different angles, 3 or 4 different, 2 days, over 2 days. How the linesman and the referee can come to that decision in the split second when you watch that shot at full speed, it is hard for me, and I don't know why you don't lean on that resource. Do I think it's always given? No. But I also believe if you watch Brad's reaction, you don't see Brad Guzan do that a lot. I've seen him this season rolling his eyes a little bit when he concedes a goal and putting his hands up in the air, mad at his defenders or mad at himself. I haven't seen Guzan, and I think he has that captain role internalized in him too, that he knows that he has to pick the right time to go to the refs. He was so outraged by this one that he felt the need to go. Yep. And the instant reaction of him, I think, shows that in his mind, he was probably thinking, oh, crap, as that ball came. And as he stepped out of the way, as he dummied it, he was thinking, oh, my God, this is like not okay. So I think the speed that he goes to the referee also shows. And like I say, it's out of character of him. He's been more of an eye roller and a hands up in the air, not a blame everyone else for your mistakes.
Right. Yeah, that's never really been his style. I'll take you guys into a scary place, my brain, as all this is happening. And just so I think that my commentary makes a little sense here, because I haven't gone back to listen to my commentary on it, because I wanted to watch it with no sound to make sure, like, I kind of felt like I was heading in the right place. So it happens, and it's a great volley. It's a great hit from Clark. You don't, in the initial live action, you're not seeing, okay, he's definitely offside, he's definitely in a line of sight, or he's not in a line of sight. You're not seeing that, you're seeing the hit, and it's a great hit, and it's a goal. So then we start to look back at the replays, because, you see, even though you're not focused on it, you see that George Bello's stepping up, for example. You see that Royer, is getting out of the way of the shot. Okay, that's in the back of my mind. The first replay, I think my first question was, and I think you could almost hear this process in my head of, okay, you're seeing the replay, but okay, something doesn't look right. And you see Brad's reaction immediately in the first replay, and he's pointing to his eyes. So the first thing I'm looking for is Royer between the ball and him. And that's why I said line of sight, I know a couple of times. Once we saw it more, and you could see that, okay, he gets a look at the ball, but then he's got to play the potential deflection. You're checking that. You're also checking to make sure Bello stepped up, and he did. And that was an easy one. We went back to it to confirm it in the postgame. But you're playing through all of that, and I thought Stephen Glass nailed it in his post-match with us before he did the media availability, where he said it impacts Brad's ability to play the ball because he has to wait. And when you go back and watch, Brad hesitates.
And the thing about goalkeeping that you have to understand is it's literally milliseconds.
Yeah.
It's not. This is why we train as goalkeepers with reactions. We have stupid shaped balls. We have balls with little knobbles on them that hit the ground funny because you have to make these split-second reactions. And if you, in your mind, are impeded for even a millisecond of doubt, that slows down everything in the grand scheme of things. He doesn't get his full extension of a dive on. If you watch, he can cover. He's a big dude. He can cover the whole goal. He doesn't cover the whole goal with that dive because he is holding.
Because he's got to play the deflection. And
I had a thought of it, Jason. The pointing to the eyes was probably the thing. I don't know how he gestures a different way, but maybe that was leading to the referee, because the referee's like, no, he wasn't. But at the end of the day, when you read the breakdown of the rule, there's so many other options, and it's got to be that option of making, he impeded the player's way of making a play. And I loved Kevin's analogy of a dummy. A dummy, you make a comment about a dummy when you're commentating. You praise it. It's a play. It's a style of play. It's a technique. It's something that you practice on the training field. So how you can't say that that's the action on the play is a confusing one to me. Like I say, it's one of those which they're not always given, and I'm not mad that it wasn't given. I'm confused as to how they made that call in real time when you have VAR accessible to you now. Now, a few years ago, we might not be having this discussion as much, because we'd be like, you know what? It's a difficult one. The referees don't have the resources. They had to watch that at live speed one time round. Now that's not the case. So why have the VAR if you're not going to use it at moments like this that are pivotal to a game? And with a team like Atlanta United, unfortunately, once you went a goal behind and you're playing red balls, I wondered in that moment, is this game over? Because we haven't been too clinical in front of net. We hadn't created chances. It's one of those where the mindset of the players, let's be honest, when you go a goal down and you're not a team that's finishing your chances and not creating a ton of chances, you're thinking, well, this is going to be an uphill battle from now on. And I think it changed the way that second half went completely.
Yeah, and just to your point, I guess as the two of you are processing it, and as Kevin was in the first hour of the show, why don't you look at the monitor? And in retrospect, I'm thinking that might be what Brad is focusing his eyes to. It's like either I can't see or go take a look, one of those two elements. But then the Howard Webb how can Howard Webb assume another person's activity? That's the other thing where he said, well, Brad can't do X.
Yeah, his ability. How does Howard Webb, who's probably never dove for a shot, like I'm not trying to, but that's where I'm not an elite goalkeeper. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know Brad's ability, but I know that watching him and watching his movement, he could have covered more of the goal and could have got two hands on that if he had known that he had the time to take those extra steps. We talk about goalkeeping, and it's a couple of little steps before you dive. He didn't take those steps because he wanted to hold his feet, because he wanted to wait, because it's a lot harder to change from moving feet. If your feet are moving, you can't switch direction if he redirects that in the other way. You need to be set. The set position is what it's called in goalkeeping, and that's where your feet are still. So Brad wanted to keep his feet still for as long as possible so that he could react and change direction if he needed to. And then obviously you can't get as good of a dive from still feet once he realizes, okay, it's not going to touch. So
yeah, one more behind the scenes that came up from this, and Jess, I'm sure this will go back to your training as a goalkeeper. Kevin talked to Aaron Hyde after we were off the air, former goalkeeper coach for Atlanta United, worked with Brad Kazan for years and years and years. And he said exactly what we echoed. He felt like we nailed it on the broadcast because exactly what you're saying. You're taught to hold your ground there because of the potential deflection. You're trying to cover as much of the goal as possible, including the deflection. Because if he goes all the way for that shot and it deflects, you're done. You're screwed. It's back in the other corner.
You can't change direction. It's impossible. So the more I watch it, the more I see that he holds his movement and he doesn't step into his save. You see shots from distance where a goalkeeper watches them the whole way. And that's the argument. People have said he saw the shot the whole way.
Yeah.
You can see the goalkeeper's movement across the goal as they take a couple of steps into their dive to make sure they cover their full post. He doesn't do that.
Right.
Why doesn't he do that? Because he may visually see the shot the whole way, but he can't see the potential of the shot and the deflection because he can't mind predict what the player is going to do.
He knows Royer's there.
Yeah.
So, like I say, I'm not going to say that it's going to be one that's given all the time, but I would have liked to see the referee crew use the resource they've been given. I think MLS has done a lot better in not overusing VAR to the extent that we saw when it was introduced early on. But these are the moments where it's begging to be used. These are the moments where you're saying, how can you truly make a decision about a player's intention on the ball and how it impact their play by seeing it one time in full speed? We don't even know. I'd like to see the referee's positioning on that one, the linesman's positioning on that one. You can't see that. You need the shot from behind the goal, and no referee official has a vision from behind the goal without going to VAR.
Props to Sharif Solomon, who tweeted this at us. Went back in the ProReferees.com archives a little bit. Now, this is pre-VAR. This is from April of 2017. There were two instances that they pointed at in their play of the week 5 offside interfering with an opponent dialogue. Now, again, this is pre-VAR. VAR didn't come in until later in the 2017 season. So they're talking about it in the old school way of how the ARs, how the referee communicated on it. I'm going to leave a lot of it out, but I want to read one passage because I think it's very, very important. And just because you have a VAR, it doesn't change this, because this is the decision. Talking about Andrew Wenger from Houston. And he was in a situation where he was similar to what Royer was in on Brad Guzan. This was Wenger from Houston against Luis Robles of the Red Bulls. This is the passage. Does Wenger make an obvious action which clearly impacts on the ability of Robles to play the ball? This is subjective. It all depends whether you believe that the movement of Wenger has any impact on the goalkeeper's ability to save the ball. With the line of vision, the only person who really knows that fact is Robles himself. In this case, as Robles' movements didn't appear to change or hesitate, then the correct decision was made to allow the goal. Pro said change or hesitate. Mm-hmm. If you look at this, I think he hesitates. I think he's hesitating because of because of Royer's positioning.
I love that wording. That's some good wording there, because it gives it more of a characterism that you can view it by. Mm-hmm. Did the goalkeeper hesitate? Did they have to change? Yes, in this case they did. And that's a far more tangible way of looking at it in terms of a more specific definition. And I like that one. And I think that if you watch it back, but again, they made that decision without VAR, which is impressive that they made that decision that quickly. But again, use the resources you have in front of you to just get another look. Yeah,
the way it works through, and this was pre-VAR, but they did kind of walk you through the process. So the AR is only looking at offside. Is he in an offside position? They can't judge anything else from where they are. They can only look at, was he offside? And it's a problem when the AR tells Brad Guzan that he's not getting to the shot. And that's what happened here, because Brad talked to the AR.
And you don't want to tell a goalkeeper that ever.
No.
You don't want to tell a goalkeeper that in the heat of the moment. You don't want to tell them after that to tell a goalkeeper that they weren't getting to the shot.
No.
And I'm reading some tweets about,
and that's not his job. But that's the thing, and that's what I wanted to point out here.
But I'm reading some tweets about Guzan right now, and yes, I've been critical of Guzan for seasons. We all know that. I don't think he's as fast as he's ever been. But one of the things that I have continued to praise him for is, I think that his close reactions aren't his strongest part, but I think his shot stopping from distance and his coverage of the goal is. Mm-hmm. I think that he is able to make the save from the initial, he's able to make the coverage. I don't know if he makes the save, but he's able to cover more of his goal from the distance. Would he have saved a reaction shot? Probably not, but it would have been offside. If the play had been on the ball and there had been a deflection, that one wouldn't have mattered. I think he has a better chance of saving a shot from that distance based on his performances this season, because he has been relatively solid from those longer shots. It's the shorter shots and it's the distribution that has been the things that I have been most worried about. And I thought you guys did a great job of talking about the goal kick situation too, because that's going to make me go grey very early watching Atlanta United force it out the back too much.
I'm okay with the forcing it out of the back, but you got to do it responsibly, because building it out of the back, like if you play that goal kick short to your center back inside the 18, okay, fine. If mistakes happen, that's the way you're going to play. I'm okay with that. You can't have the center backs there, have the outside backs pushed up high, have everybody into the other half, and then play into the short range in your half. Mm-hmm. You can't play to that point.
it's like one of the things when little kids used to have, and I was one of them when I was younger, you had your defender take your goal kick for you, right? And one of the things you were told by that is you're taking the risk because now there's no offside trap.
Yep.
There's no offside rule because you got two defenders behind the line of the ball plus the goalkeeper. So if you mess that one up, you're inviting that pressure. And to play it down the middle as well was the bit that confuses me. Like you have to, if you're going to play a pass down the middle or a long chipped ball, whatever, you have to be 100% you're going to get that right and you're going to maintain possession because
if you go short, you're too risky. If you go long, it's different.
Mm-hmm. If you're going into that mid-range.
Yeah.
If you're going to the side, even if it doesn't go out of bounds, which we've seen it go out of play plenty of times this season, even if it doesn't, the amount of work you have to do to score a goal from the sideline, from the touchline, is a lot harder than it is down the middle countering at you. So it's one of those that I see that we're trying to vary it up a little bit, which is something I've asked for, but it's varying it up and making sure that you're assured of yourself because you're just putting yourself into unnecessary pressure. And I don't think that corner kick ever needed to happen. We shouldn't be giving away corners off our own goal kicks.
Yeah, for sure.
Jess, as a keeper, how difficult is it to keep an eye on what's going on in front of you and then balance that with what's going on in your peripheral vision? And I mentioned that because of, Brad is focusing on the ball at the top of the area, but you also have Royer kind of out of the side of your left eye. How difficult is it to keep an eye on everything in three dimensions simultaneously?
You basically have to have 360-degree vision. It's a really tough one, particularly when you're trying, that things outside of your immediate sight affect the play. So you have to be aware of everything. I wouldn't even say it's in his periphery a lot of the time, though, because you're having to move your head. You're taught as a goalkeeper to have like an owl's head, if that makes sense, that it has to be rotating at all times. You're meant to be looking, checking your shoulder, checking both shoulders. So for him being there, every time he checks that left shoulder or every time he moves to look, there's that distraction and there's that awareness that he's there. Now, I'm okay with players using, it happens, forwards, we've seen it with free kicks, haven't we, where a forward stands right in front of the goalkeeper's vision and moves as soon as the free kick is about to be taken. Mm-hmm. Now, I get it. It's gamesmanship. It's tactics. It works. There's a difference when you're there the entire time throughout the play, and I think that's the one that the issue is. But like you say, having people in your periphery, you've got to imagine you can't have tunnel vision as a goalkeeper. You have to be able to view the whole pitch. You are those eyes of the full sight. That's what makes the goalkeeper's view so interesting because they do see the game from a different perspective. But you can't underestimate. It doesn't matter if you think they are a player that's not going to make a play on the ball. If they're stood there, it's something you've got to think about. It's something you've got to communicate to your defenders. So having that player in the position just creates more work for your mind, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's a lot to balance. And that's why I feel like even if Jair Marufo decides, all right, he didn't impede, whatever, he has to look at it because I don't think Marufo can judge that from where he is. I don't think the AR can't because the AR is only looking at the offside. The AR can't look at anything else. They're only seeing, is he in an offside position? He was. Okay, done. You have to take a look. You have it now. Before you didn't have that. You had to judge. Now you can take another look, and this is the kind of play that I think deserves it. So I'm with GK Union on this one. Like, it's not enough just to say that, well, if he's not in the line of sight, then he can do whatever he wants. Because then that changes the way you defend on these situations. Because what's the natural inclination for a goalkeeper on that first clearance, Jess? It's to clear everybody out. You want all of your defenders to step.
Get everyone out because you're trying to catch everyone offside because you don't want any deflection to lead to an easy opportunity.
So now you can't do that. And if you're an opponent, then what do? You have guys stay up there on the posts, and they're not in the line of sight, and they can get out of the way of the shot, but they're okay because that's the way this interpretation has gone. I'd like to look, because we've talked about it from a pro and an MLS perspective, and we know every league kind of has their own precedents that they set. I'd love to look at this if we can find it from England, from Germany, from South America, and see if pro is in line with the way others are interpreting it. I don't know if they are or not, but I feel like it's a conversation that needs to be had. We've talked a lot about it. And I think we've all, agreed that it's a judgment decision, and it's, referees are going to make their judgment on this. Let's talk about the game as a whole too, because I don't want people to keep up with the argument that, okay, you're just excusing bad play because of a referee decision. No, not at all. Atlanta had a good 45. They didn't get enough to show for it. And after the goal, they couldn't break the Red Bulls down, and they really struggled to do that.
It was a tale of two halves, really, wasn't it? The first half was very encouraging. I don't think it was the best we've ever played, but there were definitely some positive moments, and it was encouraging. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the biggest issue was once the goals conceded, we didn't have that same fight and belief, and that's what's concerning as a mindset. It seems like we've fallen into this trap of when we concede, a lot of the times the confidence goes, the way we play changes slightly, and we don't have that belief that we can get back into it. And I've played on teams like that. I've played on teams as a goalkeeper where, unfortunately, as a defensive unit, we kind of agreed and we had this pact that we needed to keep things to a shutout, because otherwise we're looking at losing the game. It was our only real option because we didn't have the belief. And I'm not proud to admit that we thought like that, but unfortunately these are things that start going through your mind when you're used to, there's only so many times you can lose by one goal.
Yeah.
That you don't start thinking, hang on a minute, this is trouble. If we concede, we're not going to get these opportunities. We're not going to have a chance to get back into the game. And Atlanta United never looked like scoring, particularly in the second half.
That late opportunity was the best one, and Mara gets a little fortunate with the second save. I thought he handled the first one well, coming off his line on Hindman. I think the second one comes off his side or his hip that Gallagher nearly bent in.
Yeah. It's one of those where I think that once we need to get a better mindset about it, and that comes with goals and that comes with confidence, but you could see the body language change once we conceded, and that's what's difficult. And like I say, the first half very encouraging. Loved Escobar at centre back, as you say. It's a position you can tell he enjoys playing too, and that's what, when you hear interviews and you talk about the fact that he always said he was a centre back, that's a position that he feels most happy in. And I thought he provided a lot of questions to be asked because he looked solid back there, and I felt like it offered more stability than sometimes when he's in on the wing back. It's like a little concerning, because he does have that hot head to go forward and be out of position. And I think it almost offered him a bit more structure, and he thrived in that structure, which I loved.
Yeah, because as you guys were talking about it, the word that I wrote down for Escobar was calmer, or it just seems to where he's more locked in as to what he's doing, as opposed to the more emotional that he gets when he's over on the side. Yeah,
I would agree with that. I think he had, I know I've been critical sometimes of his hot head, and we love some hot head, but at times the passion becomes too much and it ends up making irrational decisions or putting himself at risk with the referee. And I thought he was a lot more stable in that centre back position, and the pairing of him and Miles Robinson is something that could be extremely exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how this roster comes together, and we're going to have a lot of time to talk about it because next season's not till like March, it looks like. So there's going to be a very interesting off season that we will have a lot of fun digging into what the depth chart looks like and all of that. Question for you before you leave us about the Women's Super League. Had a chance to watch a little bit of the match on Saturday morning with Manchester United. Bernd wants to know about Chelsea, and are they the favorites? But what is wrong with Sam Kerr?
I mean,
not producing.
I don't
really.
think so. Yeah. I'm just glad people are talking about it, though. Firstly, I want to say how awesome it was to turn on regular TV. I know it's cable, but regular TV to an extent, and be watching it, not having to use like a crazy app or some sort of VPN to watch it, potentially pirating watching. I'm not trying to get myself in trouble.
That broke up. Didn't hear anything.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about there, Jess.
Things you used to have to do for the love of the women's game, but I think it was a great way, and I was very happy to see a lot of people watching and talking about it. So that's great progress. I think that Arsenal are my favorite right now. I mean, they're scoring for absolute fun. They're fantastic. And what I like about Arsenal is they have big names, but it's not as big a names as all the people bringing in people from loan. You're looking at Man City, you're looking at teams like Man United bringing in people. You got Tottenham bringing in Morgan, who obviously is looking very miserable on the touchline at the moment. I think it's a little cold for her down in North London. Sam Kerr, I don't think she was as bad this weekend as she was in the cup final. I think she's too in her head. I think she's in that place where we see with players where they get a lot of opportunities. I don't know, whoever watched the cup final will know that she had about 20 opportunities to score and literally could not finish to save her life. I think that it's a big move. It's a big change.
About to say, is she feeling the pressure?
It's a lot of pressure. She was the biggest name signing. She's been a huge financial signing for the women's game. And it's one of those things sometimes where you have that. We see it in the men's game all the time. When a player that has this big transfer move, it can take a while to hit your step. And like I say, the leagues are different. You watch both. NWSL and Women's Super League are different leagues. We see it with all the players coming over. They're not adapting instantly. It takes time. So I think Kerr will be okay. She got a goal this weekend against Man City. She just needs to find her step and find her finishing. But like I say, Arsenal is the team to watch for me right now. I think they scored 5 more goals this weekend. They're just finishing for fun at this point.
Is Medema the best player in the league?
I think one of them. I think that we've got so much quality over there, and that's what's exciting. And what I think is going to be a very special thing for the Women's Super League right now is that it's gaining an international audience because people are following their homegrown players. They're following the U.S. women's national team players. It used to be, and I've talked about this on my Twitter, it used to be that all the English players were fleeing to the States. Now it's vice versa. So I think it's a very exciting time for the English league. And hopefully it puts pressure on NWSL to figure out what they're doing with their league, with their systems, with their payment, with the U.S. women's national team, or the players being paid by women's national team instead of, the clubs and all of that, all the loopholes, because they're going to need to, because otherwise they're going to lose all their players. And let's be honest, how many people would watch NWSL to the same level if it didn't feature all of their favorite stars?
That's a good point.
Yeah. And Reading is 6th in the table right now, only a point behind Manchester City through the weekend.
Yeah, they're doing okay. My dad and I have a few conversations about, I think they play well, but they don't always get the results. And unfortunately, it's one of those things with the women's game right now. Yes, the money's being invested at the top levels, but is this going to cause the breakaway of the top 3 and 4 as the rest of the league can't afford to invest at the same level? I think we're soon going to see in the women's game what we've seen in the men's game, that those who have money can compete at a higher level than those who can't. And I think that gap is going to get bigger. And that's one of those, it's a great thing for the game to an extent to see people invest and appreciate the monetary value of women's soccer. But at the same time, one of the things that was special and is special is the fact that a lot of teams were competing because it was on a more even base. So you got to take it with a pinch of salt and be happy that there are people willing to invest and spend money on the women's game. But at the same time, hopefully it doesn't cause the league to separate into sort of 1 or 2 teams only, and then the rest just getting annihilated each week by those big teams.
Yep.
We're going to dig into this big controversy right now, this Project Big Picture proposal on just the whole of the English game. But I wanted to throw this one at you because it was in The Athletic, and there's not a lot of detail on it yet, but there's a document that The Athletic has seen, because the women are included in the conversation here about a certain amount of money going from the Premier League to the FA for the women's game. But part of this big project is a working group would be set up to develop and establish a new independent league for women's pro football in England, not to be owned by the Premier League, which some had speculated, or by the FA. Perhaps opens the door to private equity funding for the women's game or a sponsor-led initiative. The Athletic speculates that would be a high-risk approach right now because the game requires guaranteed income. There is a £10 million bailout for the Women's Super League and the championship on the women's side, and a pledge of more than £50 million per year for those two divisions, the Women's FA Cup and Women's Grassroots funding. That's all part of this project big picture.
It's a weird one. There's positives in there, definitely, but you got to take it with a pinch of salt, because right now, I wouldn't say it's not working, the league. Right now, I would say with how they're doing it, the league is beginning to make a lot of progress. So my fear is, if it's not broken, why try and fix it?
Yeah.
Why try and change it when you've made the last couple of years? And when I think back to when I moved here in 2013, Women's Super League was like 2 years old, and no one in America would watch it, and I didn't even have access to watch the games. The level wasn't as good. You had about 4 professional players by team. That was like a qualification. They only had to have four full-time professionals. The progress that has been made in that period of time is incredible. And my fear is, by stepping in and trying to fix something that isn't broken, do you undo all that good work? We've seen the women's game in the States and how you've gone through different leagues and how these leagues have worked for a little bit and then they've been changed and then they've been disbanded. Do you want to step in and change? And also, by taking it away from the FA and the Premier League, does that impact the way the men's teams are involved with the women's teams? Because yes, is there a lot of work to be done with those partnerships and those connections? Yes. But does it have a lot of value having the positive relationships between the men's and women's teams? Yes. Was it great to see Man City's US Twitter page talking about the Man City women's team and reminding their people to watch it? Yes. These things are really important, and I think that the connection between the men's and women's team is pivotal if we're going to extend fan bases and get people talking about it. And my fear is, if you step in and you make it its own entity, whether that impacts those relationships, which in the long run does more damage than good. The numbers are nice. We like hearing about investment in the women's game. That's the positive. But is it a necessary thing, or do we need to try and just encourage the way it's going and just keep doing what you're doing to build it and be patient? Like, let's be honest, women's football was illegal in England until 1970 or something crazy like that. Like, a lot of people listening, women's football was illegal in your lifetime in England. Like, we've come a long way. So do we just be patient and keep kind of building and making it sustainable over time? Or do you try and change something 360 degrees and just hope it works? And I'm more of a, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I'm very happy with the way the women's game is going right now.
I'm going to be fascinated to see how all this plays out. It'll be very, very interesting. When are we getting you on again?
Yeah, really?
Man, I got nothing to do, guys. I'm just growing a human being, man. Like, that's all I do these days. So yeah, just let me know and I'll be here.
All right. Well, the door's always open. You hear us talking nonsense, shoot us a message and say, hey, I want to start yelling at you guys.
All righty. I can't wait. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Jess.
Be good, Jess.
Okay. Bye.
Jess talks footy with an IE because we're not plonkers around here. So make sure you're following her on your social media platforms. Let's try to wrap up with lots of reactions from everything, because there's a lot of stuff to react to.
Tafka, after the match. Grading. Tafka has grades.
Oh, he has grades.
Defensive third, A. Middle third, A. Final third, D. Goalkeeper distribution, C. One gave up a goal. The other's the reason we couldn't score a goal. Those are his grades.
What did he give the final third?
D.
It's not bad. I like the A for the defensive third. I'm okay with the distribution being where it is. Maybe the middle third, I'd come down to a B, just because the final third doesn't act independently. A, B, C minus, A, B, D. That's fine. Yeah, not bad. I'm okay with that.
Ryan Lee after the match. It was a bummer for sure. Up until that point, Atlanta had momentum, and it felt like a goal for Atlanta was close. The shot from Clark was a screamer, but it was clear Royer had to pirouette away. That's a tough one. Which prevented Brad from getting a clean look. The momentum totally changed.
Yeah, I mean, we've went round and round on the goal. We'll leave that to the side for now.
Yep.
I think the momentum changed at halftime in general. I mean, we only got a couple of minutes before the goal, but it felt like the Red Bulls came out with increased just urgency in the second half, and Atlanta kind of struggled for that. I do wonder how Moreno and Dom, especially Dom coming back from injury, Moreno making his debut, not match fit, but pretty good individual fitness, how they felt after cooling down. It felt like both of them were maybe a step slower in the second half, which there's nothing you can do. I mean, it is what it is, because if you don't start them, then the argument is, well, why didn't you start them and try to start out strong? Because that argument's been made all season long. If you do start them and then they fade, well, then they shouldn't have started. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you can pick that one apart in whichever way you want, but it felt like, and it's 2 minutes, it's a very short sample size, that the game was turning before the goal, but after the goal, it's a completely different match. That makes it much simpler for the Red Bulls. And again, I mean, 10 games this weekend, 8 of them were won by the team that scored first. One of the ones that was a comeback included a red card, a man advantage for Kansas City. So, I mean, I don't know where the numbers are. I feel like this year it's even more important to get that first goal.
The Colonel, after the match, said when your best possible result is a scoreless draw, you got to accept some 0-1 results. It is what it is.
No, that's absolutely true. When your margin for error is that, and I think in general, the way the game played out, yeah, you didn't create enough chances to say you should have won. But you give up a goal in that way, it brings that 0-1 into it. I don't think you go into it your best possible result scoreless. The way it played out, if that goal is disallowed, does the second half change? We'll never know. You have a very thin margin for error right now. And when things do go against you, and they will, no matter what's going on, you're going to have, if you have everybody healthy, you'll have a call that gets weird. You have had a weird year where it's felt like a lot of different things have gone against you. A lot of teams have had that conversation this year. Somebody pointed it out on the Atlanta United subreddit, and this is not an exact science of it, but I think it's kind of important to bring up when we talk about the decisions and things going against you. And, well, Atlanta's been gained from all these different things too, which I don't know where they are, or this happens every year, et cetera, et cetera. So the instant replay, sponsored by Cheez-Its.
Yeah.
This did not include the knockout rounds of the MLS's back tournament. This was just the regular season games, and this was from McLean CM on the Atlanta United subreddit. So group the calls into how the pundits on instant replay, and sometimes there was only one, sometimes there were two, how they judged it. So it was a bad call if both analysts agreed it was a bad call. It was a debatable call if the analysts disagreed. So Atlanta United has been involved in the most decisions on the instant replay show. 6 of them. 4 were bad calls where both analysts agreed that it was wrong. 2 were debatable. Miami's next with 5. Minnesota, Toronto with 4. Then you're down to 3 and further down. There were some teams who haven't been on there. Chicago, Colorado, Dallas, LAFC, LA Galaxy, Nashville, Orlando, San Jose, Vancouver have not been featured on there at all. To say, well, they're not getting it worse than anybody else, I mean, that's from MLS Digital. So I don't know what else to tell you. It's been a weird year. Look, it's been a weird year. It doesn't excuse the fact that you didn't create a lot of chances. But, yeah, it's a weird decision. They have justification in the way they decided on it. I disagree with the justification, and I feel like they have to go take a look at it, and I feel like their justification is flawed. 100%. I feel like it's flawed, and I go back to that piece from Pro in 2017 about, the hesitation. I think Brad clearly hesitates because he's got to hedge his bets on if that ball's deflected. He's got to cover as much of the goal as he can if that takes a deflection. So I think it affected it. That doesn't mean you don't need to create more chances. You obviously do. The attack needs to be better. It's hard. Without Joseph, it's very hard, and you haven't solved that problem. John Gallagher up top, I think the plan here was to try to get in behind more than you did. it didn't result in the chances that you needed in the first 45. Gallagher, I think, was more dangerous coming from a wide position. But you don't have a Joseph Martinez on the bench. And we don't know what Kubo Torres could have been by now if he hadn't gotten injured. So that's tough. It's tough to overcome, and it's showing right now. It's very difficult. You can't have things go against you and get results if you're Atlanta United right now because the margin for error is incredibly thin.
Matthew Edelstein is sick of losing to those clowns. And let's see, next one in the line. Joe Johnston wonders if you haven't gotten your Marcelino Moreno scarf. Why not? Morning, fam.
Are you going to explain anything about that, or are you just going to throw it in there and expect everybody to know what you're talking about?
No, I wanted you to give the update as to how many scarves we have.
You can tell people how to get it.
$25, and you can send it to PayPal at the email address soccerdownhere@gmail.com, and you can get your Bienvenido Marcelino scarf. And by the way, everybody who posted pictures on Saturday, on game day, with you and your scarves showing out on Twitter, I thought it was incredibly cool to see all of that and to show that support for Atlanta es Familia. So how many do we have left?
We are down to about 10 left. So we sold some more after that, thanks to all you guys for displaying them. That helped sell more. So we are down to the nitty-gritty here. You want to get one, shoot us a message, and we'll get you taken care of. I'll be headed to the post office later this afternoon to get the weekend orders out. So if you want yours to hit the post office, get me a message by about 1 o'clock, by 2 o'clock, because I've got some interviews here. So 2 o'clock is the cutoff for today, and we're going to be out of them very, 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 very soon.
Stizzle says Moreno was impressive in his debut. I just wish he had reliable attacking players ahead of him. Moreno to Joseph will be incredible eventually. #Overreaction Monday.
Yeah, Moreno was really good. I like his ability. I like his quickness. Tracked back, defended well. Give him some time on the 1v1s. I think he was 1 of 4 on those, but he still had a couple of nutmegs even with that. I think you saw what he can be in that little quick slip pass into Bello that caught Bello by surprise. It did take a little bit of a deflection going through the defender's legs, but you saw how he sees the game in that kind of play. He thinks quick. He plays quick. He's technical enough to play quick. He'll be a great addition. You just got to deal with him getting the rust knocked off right now. And that's difficult, but that's just where it is. You want to play him because he's one of your most talented players. You have to accept that he's not 100% in terms of effectiveness right now. That's it.
Turner Kirby. I don't know what to think about the league's recent COVID postponements. We've seen games postponed, but if there isn't a Colorado-level outbreak, I don't think we need to worry about the league status, but it is definitely puzzling. In regards to the playoff bubble that was rumored on the full-time report, would the PA agree to another bubble since they agreed to one, left it, and have now had almost 3 months out of it? More to follow.
I would have said they don't need a playoff bubble before this weekend. Now I'm not so sure, just because it's gotten more difficult. To recap, and this was, I believe, Soccer America's recap. Or no, it was Associated Press, sorry. 3 matches in the space of 24 hours were postponed. Rapids and LA Galaxy was postponed after another Rapids player tested positive. Then the Sunday games with Columbus and Orlando, Dallas and Minnesota were added to the list. Colorado, 12 staff members, 5 players have tested positive since September 24th, according to the Associated Press. They have had 4 matches that have been postponed. 2 have been rescheduled. There is no more room for them to reschedule the other 2. The Columbus match was postponed following 2 confirmed cases among Columbus staff. And the Dallas-Minnesota match was delayed after 2 confirmed positive cases among Minnesota's players. So 2 different situations there, but it looks like the bar is when it's 1 player or staff member that tests positive, they don't postpone. When it's more than 1, they do. I think we've established that is the bar for how they deal with this.
Yeah.
Burns says, how will they solve the Colorado issue? I have no idea. They can't replay them. There's no way they can play them.
Yep.
And you can't pick and choose which ones you replay, because if you say, well, we're going to play these after the decision day games during the international break. LAFC would not say we're going to do that because they're going to be missing players during that international break before the playoffs. That's going to be another challenge for MLS is the international break going into the playoffs because FIFA has ruled that unless you have a local stipulation, a local government stipulation or national saying you have to quarantine, not a league rule, but a government decree, you have to release players for national team duty. Now, MLS has made the rule that when they come back, they have to sit for 10 days. Are you going to have people miss playoff games because of this? If MLS changes the rule, okay, fine. And that's, I think, what they're going to have to do. Or if they think the rule is sound to protect the players and staff who are part of, the MLS Tier 1 side of things, then they have to push back the start of the playoffs. Because you cannot have players miss playoff games due to getting called up during that November window. You can't. And you can't make up these games during that window either before the playoffs start, in my opinion. That's not right either. I don't know how they solve it. I think you're going to have to go to points per game because I don't know how you get these other games played. But then the question comes, well, why are you rescheduling 2 games for Colorado and the opponents have to play those games on shorter rest than they would have been, potentially? You have to go back and look to see if that's definitely the case. And not rescheduling the others, and the opponents get the benefit of that, or maybe the not benefit of that if they wanted to get 3 points there and improve their standing. How you decide is going to be brutal. I don't know. I don't. There's not an easy solution here at all. But that's where things stand right now. You had 3 games postponed. That has to open the door for the conversation about a playoff bubble. I don't see any other way. The problem with that is you're creating a bubble for teams that could be one and done.
Yeah.
And if it's a different scenario than you did your MLS's back tournament and what the NBA did, what the WNBA did, what the NHL did, what MLB is doing for their playoff bubble. It's a completely different scenario. It can be done, but that's a lot of expense to have a bunch of teams come, and then how long are you going to have them in beforehand?
Yeah.
For half of them to be gone quickly. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. You've got to have that on the table, though, now to get this season completed. It has to be a possibility. I don't think you want to do it, but it has to be a possibility.
Turner doesn't think the MLSPA would especially agree to it with seeing some of the other PAs of the sports saying no more bubbles. The NHL's the first that comes to his mind. Mm-hmm. Turner thinks MLS has an opportunity to be the first major domestic league to crown a champion in a local market, and they're going to have to try their hardest to keep it like that, especially knowing that someone is eventually going to have to do it, and they already revolutionized the bubble a month before the NBA, but NBA gets all the credit. Everyone keeps saying bubble, 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 but eventually someone's going to have to step into the deep end and crown a champion in a home market.
Yeah, but you don't step into the deep end just to do it. If you can't swim, you don't step into the deep end just because you want to be the first one to do it. And I don't know if you can swim. You've got to have other solutions. It needs to be on the table. I don't think it's what you have to do right now. I'm not ready to go there yet. But as Jarrett Smith points out in the Twitch pitch, do you want a conference final? Do you want let's take LAFC and Seattle in a Western Conference final, a rematch of last year. Can't wait. Big game. It's going to be in Seattle this time. You're going to have fans in the building at that point, maybe, possibly, who knows. Exciting. Everybody's pumped. Oh, Jordan Morris is out because he tested positive. Is that how you want to decide a champion? I would ask that as we start to consider these things, one, everything has to be on the table as a possibility because you want to determine a champion in the most fair way possible. Two, I think there's an in-between step here that you could explore of a local bubble. So, okay, if you are LAFC in Seattle, and let's say that game's going to be in Seattle, and you've already had postseason games, but let's throw that one into the first round just to do it. So you got LAFC, the game's going to be in Seattle. LAFC is going to have to travel. You don't have to go into a bubble to go play this in a neutral site somewhere. LAFC goes into their own bubble locally ahead of the postseason. And if you want to set that, that's 10 days or whatever. They go in, they all stay together locally, but in a bubble scenario. Whatever you got to do for that, I think that's the way to go. Because as we've seen in South America, and CONMEBOL has backed this up, you can control the travel portion to be safe with that. If you go into a local bubble and you're LAFC and you got to travel, and this is just the hypothetical, just trying to give you a situation. LAFC goes into their local bubble. Everybody tests negative. Everybody's clear to go. Everybody's good. You get on the charter flight. You fly to Seattle, even if you want to do it the day before, which I think is fine in this scenario because you want to make it as competitive as you possibly can. So you fly in late in the day before. You go into a hotel. You are in a bubble. You are not going out anywhere. You are in the hotel. You are having the meal brought to you. You are doing all of the protocol things you're supposed to do. You are there until you go to the stadium and play, and then you fly back. You can do all of those things, maintain the safety requirements, and play these games in local markets. But you're going to have to create local bubbles for teams while they're in the postseason, I think, at a minimum. Because you don't want your postseason to be affected. And if that means players stay, and it's not like the Bundesliga or like Leeds where Bielsa has dormitories set up for his players on site on their training ground. You don't have that in MLS training grounds. But do you have a local hotel partner? Do you have somewhere that you can sort that out to have that kind of thing done? I think you do. I think you can sort that out. And that would be probably far more palatable for your PA, your Players Association, to accept. And I think it would also guarantee that your champion is your best team left, as opposed to the opposition the day before a final or a semifinal loses their best player due to a positive test. I don't know. There's no perfect solution here, but that feels like the more palatable solution than going into a postseason bubble where you might have to go in for 10 days or 2 weeks beforehand or even a week beforehand, and you lose one game and you're away from your family again for an extended period of time and you're done. Right. It feels like a costly exercise for no good reason. You figure out whatever the amount of time is before a game to go into the bubble, and you do it, but you do it locally. That's it. That's the way I think you can solve it.
Nathan Pugh, first thoughts after the match were that the Red Bulls squeaked by again. Moreno looks a good player, but I'm afraid it may be a little too late, although make the playoffs and anything can happen. And C, bring on your Hamburglar.
You didn't bring Moreno for just the playoffs this year. Let's throw that out. It doesn't matter about that part of it when you're talking about him coming in. I understand the point, but I don't want that to get misconstrued either. You brought him in for a 5-year deal, 5.5-year deal, a quarter-year deal. He's here for a while, or at least that's the intention. Unless a big offer comes in, and then it makes sense for everybody, and he sells them on. That's soccer. That's just, we got to get used to that. But the plan is for him to be here for a while. You want him to be as good as he can be right now, and hopefully get you into the postseason. But that's not the only reason you brought him. So let's separate those two a little bit. Right now, you're in a playoff spot. You've got, when you look forward at this season, you've got 2 games where you'll be a favorite the rest of the way. Cincinnati and DC. No question you're a favorite in those 2. You've got a trip to Miami that Miami probably will be favored. Do they have early numbers? They do. Actually, Miami is favored in a massive way on Wednesday. I thought that would be a little bit closer. But right now it's Miami minus 154, Atlanta plus 350. You're not going to have another game where you're favored the rest of the way. And that's going to be hard. But when you look at the teams around you, like the teams that are around you are there for a reason. I think it's easy as Atlanta fans. You get frustrated because you're not used to being in the spot. But you're around Chicago, who's not going to be favored in a bunch of games either. You're around Miami, who's not going to be favored in a bunch of games either. You're around Nashville, who's not going to be favored in a bunch of these games either. Like, that's a fact. But you've got 2 games that you have to get 6 points from in Cincinnati and D.C. No question, no excuse, no nothing. You got to win those 2. That's 6 points. You got 4 other games. The game at Miami, is probably the most winnable that you have left that is not one of those two. Because you go to Columbus, which will be very difficult. You go to Toronto. You don't go to Toronto. You go to Hartford, Connecticut. But you're playing Toronto, who is a very difficult opponent. And you're going to Orlando, who's a very difficult opponent. So outside of your 2 home games that will have limited attendance with DC and Cincinnati, the Miami match is your 3rd most winnable game. It is incredibly massive now after the weekend's results. With Miami winning, with you losing to Red Bulls. It is the game of the season. Wednesday night in Fort Lauderdale. Absolutely critical. Because outside of the 6 points that you think you should get against DC and Cincinnati, I don't think you can expect points in Hartford, in Orlando, in Columbus. Now, can you steal some? Hopefully. Please do. Can you expect them? I don't think you can. So it's going to be a difficult road. Now, again, all that being said, you're around these teams in the table for a reason. None of these teams are going to be favorites on a regular basis. You know, right now, Chicago is 1 point ahead of you. They beat DC last night. They go to Minnesota, not favored. They host Sporting Kansas City, probably not favored. They host the Red Bulls, which will be a toss-up game for them. They go to Philadelphia, won't be favored. They go to Nashville, another kind of toss-up game for them. They host NYC, which I would have said normally Chicago would not be favored there, but who knows? That's decision day. Chicago's season will come down to the home match with the Red Bulls, the away match in Nashville. Okay, you look at Nashville on the other side. They're out of the playoff portion right now. They go to Houston. They are a pretty big underdog there already. They host Dallas. Probably will be an underdog. They host New England. Maybe they're a favorite there. They go to Montreal, or they go to Red Bull Arena masquerading as Montreal.
Yes.
Toss-up, I think. They host Chicago, which we already talked about. They host Dallas. They go to Orlando on decision day. There's not a lot of games that you can look at as 3 points for Nashville either. Now let's look at Miami, because they are 1 point back. Nashville's even with you on points, but you have more wins. Miami, the rest of the way, has the big match with Atlanta. They go to Red Bull Arena to play Montreal. They host Orlando. They go to Dallas. They go to Hartford to play Toronto. They host Cincinnati on the final day. So they've only got 1 3-pointer that you can reasonably expect. It's decision day against Cincinnati. Montreal, The game with Atlanta is critical for them because it's probably one of the last games that they'll be favored in. So this is the playoff picture. Burns says, I think Atlanta United fans need to understand there's a good chance of no playoffs. Miami, Nashville, and Chicago are playing better than Atlanta right now. I don't think it's a wide margin that they are, but they're all right there because none of them are necessarily standing out. Nashville dropped points in an inexplicable way last night. They had a 1-goal lead. They were playing really well early. Alistair Johnson with 2 yellows to get a red. Can't have that happen. They threw away points against Houston as well at home earlier. Can't have that happen. Nashville's not a guarantee that they're better. Chicago, you could say, is better. You could also look at some of their results and wonder where they're going to get more points left. Miami, so far, is better. The win at Red Bull Arena, the win at home against Houston, good results. The loss to NYC, not so good. The loss at Philadelphia, horrendous. The loss at home to Red Bulls a while back, horrendous. It's up and down. So I don't think any of them are playing better definitively. It depends on how you look at these teams and how you feel about them. I think there's a lot of negativity about Atlanta right now. I think Nashville should have questions. I think Chicago and Miami should have questions. I don't think any of them are a guarantee to get through here because you look at these schedules, they all have difficult roads. For me, the Atlanta-Miami game is what it comes down to. It really, really does. If Atlanta gets a win here, that playoff route becomes much more clear. If they don't, they have to go steal a win, in my opinion, in Columbus on decision day, in Orlando, or in Hartford against Toronto on the weekend. If you don't beat Miami, you have to go get 3 points somewhere where you're not expected to. And that also expects you to get your 6 points against Cincinnati and D.C. It's not going to be easy. I mean, the season has put you in this spot. You get a chance on Wednesday to not play yourself out of it completely, but really clear that road a little bit more than the muddy one that it looks like right now.
Shiva says it'll be very disappointing for the fans and the clubs if we miss the playoffs this year. Yes, there has been injuries and coaching changes, but regardless, I don't see missing the playoffs as an acceptable result in any form for a big club with big ambitions like ours. And I hope it doesn't become a lingering negative effect for this young group of players.
Oh, no. We can stop worrying about that stuff. And I think we can stop worrying about it being a regular expectation. It's the year you're in. You can't. I don't think any of the rest of it comes into play right now. You're not getting Joseph Martinez back. You don't know what your injury situation is going to be the rest of the way with Ezequiel Barco, with anybody. You don't know. Things can happen. This is the year you're in. You got 6 games left. You control your destiny. You control it. You get to play these games. Period. If you're good enough, you're going to get into the postseason. If you're not, you're not. You've got a route that you've got 2 games you should win. You've got a game in Miami that I think will define your season. And you've got 3 tough games. It's up to you. It's up to these players. It's up to this team right now to take care of the business in front of them. But if you don't get in, it doesn't mean that, well, now you're not a playoff team on a regular basis. No, it means you didn't make the playoffs this year. Toronto didn't make the playoffs in 2018, and they went to the final in 2019. I mean, it's not like that for a team like Atlanta United. We're talking about an extended period of time. If you don't make the playoffs, you're having a different conversation. This is in a year where you do not have your best player in Joseph Martinez. Period. I hate that it feels like if you mention that, it becomes this excuse. It's not an excuse, it's a fact.
Yeah.
You don't have your best goal scorer, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle. Period. You start then going further than that, and Pity Martinez, gone. Ezequiel Barco missed a whole bunch of time due to injuries. You bring in Jurgen Damm, then got injured. You bring in Kubo Torres, injured. The craziness of 2020 that's affecting everybody is affecting Atlanta maybe harder than others because of all those other things. Those things are all facts. They're all real. Doesn't matter about how it affects these 6 games left because you're going to go on the field. You have a chance to find a way out of this. If you get into the postseason with this team, with the year you've had, you tip your cap to it, and you respect it because it hasn't been easy. That doesn't mean you're going to be a team that is now just trying to get into the postseason. No. That's just 2020. That's just the way this year is. Next year you have Joseph back. Next year you have a full year of Marcelino Moreno from day one. Next year, you have a chance to make other additions to your roster. I'm still on the 6th thing. You should almost always make the playoffs. I totally agree. Absolutely. 1 year is 1 year. Toronto's the prime example of that. Toronto had an awful year with injuries and weirdness in 2018. They didn't make the postseason. They bounced back immediately. It can be done. And it will be done here because the money will be spent for it. That was why I pushed back so hard on the thing about Arthur Blank not spending money. That's just incorrect. And you can criticize a lot of different things. That's one you cannot. Because Atlanta United has spent probably more money in terms of building a roster than any team in MLS history. And not just 1 year, but across the whole span of the team's lifespan. And the Atlanta Falcons have never been a cheap team in terms of spending. Never. So that criticism is trash. It's just not accurate. Others, sticking by Dan Quinn too long? Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy. Anytime you talk to anybody who's met Dan Quinn, who's interacted with Dan Quinn, nothing but positives to say about him as a person. Great guy. And that maybe extended his time here longer than it should have. But yeah, I think you stuck by him too long. I think the change should have been made after last season. Okay. That's a valid criticism. That's fine. In hindsight, yeah, it should have been made after last season. It's easy to say that now. I think it should have been then. It didn't happen. All right. You didn't do that with Atlanta United. You moved pretty quick. I mean, to the point where Taylor Twellman's questioning the viability of changing coaches in a year like 2020, you moved quick. Was it totally mutual? I don't know. I wasn't in the room. That's the way it was portrayed. Frank's on his feet in the Netherlands, and man, could y'all get off Frank de Boer's back? I mean, it seems like he's being talked about on every game broadcast all over the world right now. They dominated that game in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Look at some of the chances that the players missed. I didn't hear anybody talking about France and Portugal with a scoreless draw. I didn't hear anybody talking about, there were a bunch of them. Poland and Italy. Fire the managers. They don't know what they're doing. Scoreless draw. It happens. It's more pressure on him because he hasn't scored in 2 games. True. That doesn't happen very often for the Netherlands. True. He needed to win one of these, even though the friendly didn't mean anything, to get people off his back. True. But I think the criticism's really unfair right now. It fits the narrative, as Jason Nick says, so it's an easy thing. I think most of the people who are piling on with that didn't watch the game. I watched the last 20 to 30 minutes. I can't remember when I tuned in because I wasn't really into the other game I was watching, so I flip over to it. It was all orange, all going in one direction, and some inexplicable misses, some big saves. You had 15 shots. You created like 15 chances, I think. The team was not playing defensively or boring by any stretch, so just get the information before you start throwing shade, por favor. Yeah, and everybody wanted to take shots at Atlanta United again because of Frank's forwards for the Netherlands not scoring. Stop. That you can leave Frank alone now. He's gone. It's okay. We can move on to other things. Those other things are not this team not spending. These other things are you have to find a way to create chances. You have to find a way to eliminate some of these mistakes. Maybe that means you have to play a little more safe on goal kicks, on throw-ins, on set pieces, so you don't give the other team the opportunities that you did here, the one that led to the corner. Yeah, you'd like to catch a break from a referee decision at some point, but every team could say that. I think Atlanta can say that a little louder than most teams this year. You need to play better. If you want to get into the postseason, it's going to come down to the quality of your play. It has not been where it can be consistently enough. You've got to take care of business in Miami. Is a draw enough? It makes it less clear going forward, but a draw is not the worst result here. If you lose in Miami, you're going to have to steal a win somewhere, in my opinion, on the road against 3 of the best teams in the Eastern Conference: Toronto, Orlando, and Columbus. That's not going to be easy. Miami's the most winnable game on the road you have left. Your 2 home games you should win. And not because they're home, because they're against weaker competition in Cincinnati and D.C. But what are they going to do? They're going to come in and park the bus. Cincinnati will, because it's all they know. That hasn't worked against some teams. Atlanta's not the greatest attack, so it might work. D.C. didn't really park the bus yesterday in Chicago, and they did fight back and make Chicago sweat a bit. Who knows where D.C. will be at that point under Chad Ashton. I don't know. Maybe they play the kids again. Maybe they don't. Maybe they get defensive just trying to get a result. Chad Ashton's not going to be the long-term answer there, so he's not playing to try to get results to impress anybody. I don't know what that one looks like, but you should win that game. You should beat Cincinnati. It comes down to Miami. It's a massive game on Wednesday night.
You saw the FIFA video, right?
Yes.
With the Atlanta United players? Okay.
Yes.
Zeus is in this morning, and he says, please address the end of Atlanta United's FIFA video. Joseph saying next to or about Barco is damning. It's very odd of the team to post that. I'm not convinced he's holding out for a move. That wouldn't be wise, but the team has mismanaged the comms from the start. He hasn't been there since about the time PT was sold, and everyone said the team needed him to step up. Both are extremely frustrating.
I think everybody's frustrated. Carlos Bocanegra's talked about being frustrated that you haven't had Barco on the field. Stephen Glass has talked about being frustrated. They have spoken for Ezequiel Barco and said that he is frustrated. I don't know what you're supposed to do. The FIFA video, I saw it. I don't know if it's a joke. I would assume that it was because, again, there's no thing out there about a move for him right now. Almost always in these situations, I'm going to say almost because I don't know every possible situation that's ever happened in the history of the game. Almost always, you have an agent or a representative or somebody either talking to the media or leaking things out to the media about this move that my client wants or this move or this team that's interested or et cetera, et cetera. That's not happening. There has not been any reports, not even sketchy reports, any reports of a potential transfer since the beginning of September. None. And those were somewhat sketchy on Sevilla. Fiorentina was mentioned before that. Fiorentina came back up during the Sevilla stuff as a follow-up, speculation-wise. There was no talk about Fiorentina coming in with an increased offer or anything like that after the somewhat sketchy Sevilla reports. Barco said to Argentine television back in the summer that his agent had been contacted by Fiorentina and by clubs in France. There was a follow-up report to that Lyon was one of those clubs. I think that was a decently reputable report. That's a long time ago. So again, getting back to this whole thing about trying to manufacture something, there's nothing to go on. Because what are you trying to manufacture when there's no move to let that happen? Jason Nick says this, and I would 100% agree. Atlanta wouldn't let that out because they edited the video if it wasn't a joke. It's playing off of all of the unfair speculation, in my opinion. That's what it is. I mean, I don't know. Again, I have nothing to go on here. I have not heard through any sources anywhere in the world that there is an impending deal here. Because, well, one, the window's closed in Europe. So he could go to Brazil, which I don't think any Brazilian club has the kind of money that they're looking for here. I don't know if he would want to go to Brazil. Or he could go to another club in MLS. That doesn't make any sense. Like, that's about it. So when there's no talk for a month before the window closes and there's nothing to go on, how is the speculation still believable that he's trying to force a move? It doesn't make any sense. He's not raising his value by not playing. So he's not positioning himself for the January window. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know. I don't know what to say. But people are frustrated. People who want to see him play are frustrated. People who need him to play are frustrated. I don't know what you want here. You can't force the player to play if he's not healthy. If he's running on the anti-gravity treadmill, as he posted, and I don't think that was doctored in any way. I'm just trying to cut off any other conspiracy theories. Are you just running on that for fun? Or are you running on that because something's wrong? I don't know. I obviously don't know. I'm not clued into the tinfoil hats and black helicopters, so you guys are going to have to tell me on the conspiracy theories because I got nothing else. I got nothing else at all.
A handful more on Twitter.
Yep.
And since you mentioned the treadmill, I'll go to Bart's. Bart says, why would a day-to-day injury require anti-gravity treadmill training? Say that 10 times fast. Don't think that's common for a knock. The video posted on Barco's IG. Feels like the front office is lying to us. Any goodwill they built with the 2018 Cup win is quickly eroding by their own doing.
Bart, good grief, man. Bart, that's a little much. That feels a little hyperbolic here. Look, it's a knock at first. When was the last time the club described it as a knock? Long time ago.
Yeah.
He has not been able to train consistently. He's come back to training after the knock, and he hasn't been able to train the next day. He's had to go to a modified training session. To say that a player having a problem getting back on the field and the way the club has communicated that or chosen to communicate that or chosen not to communicate all of that would eradicate goodwill that the club has built up, and comparing it to a cup win, that feels like a lot. That feels like a big step. And I understand the frustration with results, but wow, we're going to go there now? And Bart's not the only one who said that. I mean, that's why I'm addressing it. It's not like it's one person saying this. This has been said. I disagree with it. Obviously, I'm biased. Don't get me wrong. I'm biased. You know that. I don't hide that from you. But I feel like, man, I think people are taking some of this personally when you can't control injuries. You can't control recovery from injuries. And I don't know what the expectation should be. And I totally agree with what Carlos Bocanegra said in the media availability, and we played on the pregame on Fox Sports South ahead of the match. I don't want to tell the opponents what the injury is if I knew what it was, especially if it's a knock, which was what it was originally said. And you could draw some conclusions from running on a treadmill with an anti-gravity thing to it that it's something in the lower body. I don't want to say what leg it is, what knee it is, what body part it is, what ankle it is, what foot it is, what calf it is. I don't want to say that because you're talking about a player who's the most fouled player in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's important. Don't dismiss that. It's important because not every player draws a bunch of fouls and free kicks in dangerous spots, and players aren't typically fouled at this level to this degree. So if he's got a lower body injury that is requiring him to run on an anti-gravity machine, and it started as a knock, and I think it's safe to assume it could still be a knock because of the way they're treating it, the way they're talking about it, but he can't train consistently because of it. Like, I don't think that eradicates the goodwill that the club has built up since winning a title. That feels like a big stretch. And I understand the frustration, but, man, that feels like a really, really big stretch. But, again, I'm biased, so I could be completely wrong in that. I don't feel like one equates to the other. I feel like we're talking about completely separate universes in that, but that's all I got.
And Bart's other overreaction was that Glass is back to his rotating ways, too many changes to a lineup that was performing well, should have kept Moreno on the bench until the second half. This team is still languid in attack, and the DC match was a false positive.
Oh, man, Bart. But here's what had happened, because it happened with Jurgen Damm. And I talked to Doug about it many times. I've talked to so many people about these things. Well, if he can't play 90, you need to start with him because you need to start better. So if Moreno hadn't started, that would have been the narrative. Because you're going to pick a narrative if you're already angry to this degree. You're going to pick one. So whatever you do is wrong. And the rotation, I mean, what are you supposed to do? You're playing every 3-4 days. What are you supposed to do with your lineup when guys are tired? Miles Robinson had to leave. You didn't have a choice there. It came down to moving Jeff Lorenowitz to center back, which I didn't think was likely, playing Fernando Meza, which I was a little surprised he didn't play, or moving Franco Escobar inside, which we've seen plenty of times. Dropping Brooksland into right back, what does that do? It opens up a spot for Jurgen Damm, who we've been wanting to see from the start for a long time. Moreno comes in. Who'd he come in place of? Mo Adams, who was nursing a hamstring. You saw it in the game on Wednesday. He came out on Wednesday late in the game, and we talked about it, about the goal that Atlanta nearly conceded. Mo couldn't chase Junior Urso. He couldn't start again a couple days later. So You bring in Moreno for him. Moreno's fresh. Who else would you have brought in there? Remedi? Who we haven't seen. Okay. I'm going to go with Moreno. No knock on Eric Remedi, but the last time we saw Eric Remedi cost you a game in Chicago. Flat out. That happened. Josetu isn't available, so that was the only other option because Mo couldn't start or he couldn't give you enough time. So, I mean, I understand frustration, but please think about it in some of these realistic ways as well after you get through the initial phase of frustration. That's all I ask. And me and Bart talk a lot about this stuff on messages and stuff, and we will, and it's all good. There's no friction. Don't make something out of it, and it's not. I respect Bart's opinion. That's why we're talking about it in this way. But I disagree with him completely in this situation because I feel like it's being unfair because it's not taking all of the situations into account. That's all. It happens.
Nathan Pugh, Howard Webb is a jerk up the red.
I don't like his explanation at all. I don't think it's fair. And I think if that is the way that Pro is going to decide these things, well, like I said, then what the goalkeeper has to do, and they're going to have to make this decision in real time, dive into the guy who's offside. Draw contact. Is that what we want the game to turn into?
Yeah.
Because if this is the way it's going to be ruled, I'm going to instruct my attacking team on corners. Don't worry about clearing out when the defense clears out. Just make sure you're towards the sides of the goals. And if a shot's coming right at you, jump out of the way. Distract the goalkeeper, but don't become active in the play. Well, you are active because you're there. So I don't think that's what the rule is intending to happen. But goalkeeper coaches have to change their instructions now. If there's a player in that situation in the 6, instead of worrying about the deflection that you have to worry about, make your dive, but make sure you dive into the player. Step out and dive into the player, draw the contact, and then make the referee make a decision. That's not what we want. But that's why I disagree with Howard Webb's reasoning here. Is it viable under the way the law is written? Yeah, it is. He's not wrong in the way he's saying it. I think he's wrong in the way he's interpreting it.
Yeah.
That's a difference. You'd have to make that case. I feel like Jair Marufo needed to take a look at it because he could not have seen how everything played out live. He couldn't see the hesitation from Gazan. He couldn't see how close Royer is, even without being in that line of sight. Line of sight's not the only way that the offside player impacts a play.
Tafka, about the lineup at the back. He says, the question that has to be asked is this. Is Meza enough quality as a CDM to negate the need to go get one? Because if he is, then Lennon is long-term a right back, and Escobar can move centrally. Lennon is good going forward, but not elite good.
I don't know about that, about Lennon not elite good. We'll have to wait and see on that one. We haven't seen Meza as a defensive midfielder, so I can't say he's good enough there because we haven't seen it here in Atlanta. And the fact that we haven't seen it probably answers the question. You're going to need a number 6. I think the fact that you haven't tried him there, and the fact that, Jeff Larinowitz is not going to be able to do this game in, game out on a regular basis for a whole lot longer. You need a number 6, and that needs to be a priority going forward for the team. I think it makes everything better. So I think Meza's lack of time as playing the 6 here and, just in general, probably answers that question. You got to address that position for me going forward.
And then Tafka says, I said a week ago I don't care about the Barco issue anymore. I'm putting him in my season-ending injury headspace, in quotes, and focusing on those we have who are healthy. If he makes it back, great, but 6 games left, and he'll need time to get match fit, unlikely.
Yeah, and that's one reason I pushed back on the Moreno and the Dom situations about starting them here, because that was always the criticism, is you bring guys back too slowly. Those were 2 guys that were able to start. You give them the start. Barco, with whatever the injury is and just piecing together things here, running on the anti-gravity, et cetera, I think you're going to have to bring him back slowly. If you get him back, it's going to be off the bench in late-game situations. And if that's what he is the rest of this year, that's what he is. If it happens, it'd be great, but there's no guarantee of it because there's no guarantee of anything when you're dealing with an injury. That's not just a Barco thing. That's just a sports thing.
Couple more on Twitter before you wrap on the Twitch pitch, and we do have a transaction that has happened this morning with FC Cincinnati.
Ooh.
Their first loan through Hoffenheim came through this morning. We'll get into that in a second. Jake Michaels. Not sure if you've talked about this, as I can't listen live today, but I saw Teise reporting that Palmeiras was targeting Heinze. I'm seeing his name thrown around. Would he be a realistic target for Atlanta United, and would Atlanta be realistic for him?
Atlanta would be the biggest club he's ever been at. Sorry, Velez fans. He's a manager who was at Godoy Cruz. He's a manager who was at Argentinos Juniors, and he got Velez into the Copa Sudamericana back-to-back years. So Atlanta would be the biggest job he's been in. Palmeiras is a big job. Palmeiras is not the club that they've been lately, and it'd be the biggest club he's been at. Either one are the biggest club he's been at. Is he somebody you should consider? Yeah, he's available. He should be considered. But is he a lock? No, not by any stretch. Defensa y Justicia got into the Copa Libertadores and the Copa Sudamericana in back-to-back years, not back-to-back Sudamericanas. And Defensa is a much smaller club than Velez. So what he did at Velez was good. It's not bad. But it's the equivalent of saying that somebody got a club into the Europa League in back-to-back years. And not a tiny club, but, Velez is... They're not Boca, they're not River, but they're one of the bigger clubs in Buenos Aires. I believe... sometimes I get this mixed up. I don't know if Velez is technically one of the grandes, the big five in Argentina, and a lot of that is historic. I can't remember if it's Velez or San Lorenzo that gets the other one, because River, Boca, obviously, Independiente, Racing, San Lorenzo, Velez are the next two from the Buenos Aires clubs. So it's not a little tiny. It's not Defensa. It's not Godoy Cruz or Argentinos Juniors. But going back-to-back in the Sudamericana is not the biggest accomplishment ever. So I don't know. I don't know if they've talked to him. I don't know if he was on the list. I don't know. He has far bigger name value as a former player than as a manager, and that needs to be understood.
Two more. Walt Baxley, all the talk about Joseph, what if he gets injured next year again? Shouldn't we have a better plan B in case that does happen? We can't have the same scenario can we as an organization.
But Walt, you have a salary cap. There's only so much you can do. Yes, players could get injured year after year, but you see this in any league with a cap. When your best player gets hurt, you can't have a player making the same amount of money sitting on the bench not doing anything, for two reasons. You don't have room in the cap, and second, nobody that good wants to sit on the bench the whole time. Because if you're a forward, you're whoever you want to look at. You're Jordan Morris. You're who else are among the lead leaguers? Is Chris Mueller. You're Daryl Dike. You're whoever. Any forward you want to pick. Jossie's Artis. That's the level of a replacement you're looking for. And they're not coming here to sit behind Joseph Martinez. That's a fact. Yes, you want to have a plan B, and that's probably what put Frank de Boer in hot water. More than anything, is he did not come up with a plan B that he trusted for the MLS's back tournament with Joseph out. He didn't. And you could even go back to the game in Mexico, where it was Pitti up top then. It was Castro up top in the first game of MLS's back. Then it was Adam John. 3 games, 3 different number 9s. That's not a plan. That's not having confidence in it. That's a problem. You need to have a plan B. But we also need to stop you're going to have a comparable plan B to your plan A in case of a Joseph Martinez. That's impossible. It's a great scenario, and it's just not realistic. So you need to have an idea of what that would be. In a perfect world, in these situations, what you have is a young player coming through who is biding their time, waiting for their opportunity. They know the situation, and if they get that opportunity, they step in. Could that be a Jackson Conway at some point? That'd be great. That would be the one that would fit, because a young player who could grow into that role. Adam John also came to Atlanta knowing the situation, but he's in a different scenario too. He's a player who had been a bench player, who went down a level, had a great season, and saw a club that he thought had a great year in front of them, which they probably would have if everybody had stayed healthy and it was a normal year. It didn't happen. And he saw that he could provide something different than what Joseph was. And it wasn't even about being a replacement if Joseph got hurt, because you don't plan that way exactly. But he would be somebody that could play with Joseph, or somebody who could give you a different option late in games. That's why he comes here. But you'd like to have a young player who can develop, and if given the opportunity, can perform. You're not going to get a comparable player as a backup. This is not Manchester City or Chelsea or Manchester United or Real Madrid, where you can pay somebody a ton of money to sit the bench. You don't have the money, and the players have different ambitions. So that's just, there's no way to solve that. I don't know.
The last one comes from the Colonel. Colonel says, rather than chiding fans with conspiracy and critical checks, I'm taking it as a barometer of the consensus opinion for a hashtag overreaction Monday.
But Colonel, here's where I'm going to tell you, just because it's a consensus opinion doesn't mean it's right. Because there's nothing to go on with the Barco injury. And yes, I'm going to continue to say that. I'm sorry, but there's nothing to go on. You've been told by the manager multiple times after games that he has trained and had to step back from training. He hasn't been able to train consistently. When the conversation is that there's no news, there's been news after every game, every time the question's been asked. You've had the president talk about it. You've had the technical director talk about it. It's been the same story. So if you don't believe the story, well, you don't believe the story. That's on you. I don't know what else to tell you. But the conspiracy theories with it, you're bringing things into it to base the conspiracy theories on that there's nothing to go on. Unless there's a secret offer from a club, or Barco's agents or representation or people around him have gone mute and don't want to hype up a potential move that the client would want, or the player would want, that the club for some reason doesn't want in this conspiracy theory. Like, none of that makes any sense, because there's no offer and there's no talk about an offer. That's not how these things play out. So I'm pointing out the inaccuracies of the conspiracy theory, and I'm also pointing out that the club has been consistent in describing what's going on here. They're not going to tell you what the injury is, and they've said why. They've said that he has trained and then had to step back from training. These things are happening. These things are real. So I don't know what else to say. Just because it's a consensus doesn't mean it's accurate. That also needs to be understood.
What's on Twitch Pitch? Anything?
I don't know, Twitch Pitch. What's on Twitch Pitch? El Mataflow helped me figure it out. I thought San Lorenzo was the other grande, and they are. Vélez is not considered a grande. It's a big story in Argentina when you look at the history of the game, with the 5 most historic grande, the big clubs: Boca, River, Independiente, Racing, and San Lorenzo's the other one. In probably the last 20, 30 years, that's flipped, and Vélez is bigger than San Lorenzo. I don't know. San Lorenzo's got a Copa Libertadores, and Vélez got one further back, so maybe they're neck and neck. But anyway, it is a step back in terms of where Vélez is their standing. So maybe a Copa Sudamericana back-to-back spot for them is seen as bigger. I don't think it is. I think they're a bigger club than that. That's just me. Anyway, that's about Gabriel Heinze, who could be in the orbit, as Teise said, of Palmeiras. So we'll have to wait and see. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back just a little bit on the Twitch pitch. Not too far, so if you guys have had questions and I've been yammering on and missing you, please repeat them in the Twitch pitch. Early voting is open. Chiefs coach Steve tweeted the link from acluga.org. You can go vote now in the state of Georgia. If you can't vote today, you can vote tomorrow in early voting. You've got all the way up till Election Day. Get your plan in order to vote, and please go vote. That is a critical part of who we are as a nation. Please go vote. And I am not telling you in any way in that how to vote. I am telling you to please go vote and exercise your option. Mataflow says, can Wyke be in the same role as Jeff? I am still in camp #Jeff forever. I wish Jeff could play forever. I don't think that's going to happen. Could Wyke play that role? Yes. He played it with the twos. Played it right back in this one. Hit a couple of nice balls with the right foot. I was hoping it'd give him a couple more opportunities because I love his long range of passing. I think White can play in that role. As a holding midfielder, could be his best position. I don't think he's going to be a starter for a top team in MLS in that role. I don't. I think Lawrence White can be a valuable utility player for Atlanta United. I really do. He can play anywhere on the back line. He can play in the 6 role. He's a hard worker. He is a player who's going to elevate every training session because of that hard work. He's a good player to have in your squad. I don't think he can step up to that level. Although, I didn't know what to expect last year when he came into the twos, coming out of Furman, and he stepped up into a big way. Can he step up further? It's possible. I don't think it's likely. Jason Nix, word on the street, soccer down here is 3 hours now. No, it's not.
No.
Oh, it might be today, but it's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
Sam Williamson is coughing about Jonathan Gonzalez as that 6. I don't know. I kind of feel like I wouldn't mind if it's somebody more established, more with experience than Jonathan Gonzalez. I think Jonathan Gonzalez is a very good player, but his development stalled at Monterrey. And I don't know why. I would want to know why before I offer the type of money that was connected to him according to Tudayene back in the summer. Because that's a big outlay for a non-regular player in Liga MX at this stage. That's a lot of money. If that's the kind of money you're talking about, you might want somebody with more experience and more of a veteran. Not against Jonathan Gonzalez. I would just want to know the answers as to why he hasn't been seeing the field consistently at Monterrey. Kefsi is trying to bring Thiago Almeida here, or Matias Almeida, I'm assuming is who you're talking, or Thiago Almada is who Kefsi's talking about. I've seen the Matias Almeida conversation as well, so I'm mixing all the rumors up. Throw them into a blender and blend all the rumors up, and we'll make up names. How about
Matias
that?
El Mendoza.
Yes, that guy. He's good. I heard he got teams in Ecuador into the Copa Libertadores preliminary rounds. It's a big deal.
Falklands Islands.
No, nothing with that. I don't know about Almeida. I really worry about what he's done at San Jose. I don't think he's a long-term answer anywhere either. And I don't know how he would be here in this kind of role with these kinds of expectations. I like Almeida. I love the way he sees the game. I do worry that maybe he is too much, maybe even more so than Bielsa at this point, of the subscriber to that way, and that's it, and there's no deviation, even if I don't have the players to do what I want to do. I think Bielsa's adjusted more with this year at Leeds, with the challenge that he has, than Almeida has at San Jose in terms of making the team better. And that's a concern, because they haven't gotten better. They've gotten worse.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's the answer. Williamson wants to pry Miguel Herrera away from Club America. Not against it. Not against it at all. Herrera's not a guy who is he's not Almeida in that he's not a rigid tactician. He is somebody who will adjust based off the players he has. He's played a lot of 4-2-3-1. He went to Tijuana and started to experiment more based off the players he had there into a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2. The 5-3-2 is a very traditional Mexican formation that they've used for years and years and years. Brought that back to Club America when he came back. Herrera is more in the Carlo Ancelotti kind of school of this, of great man manager, handles the big moments with no problem, big personality. Tactics, he'll do what it takes to win. So that's a good fit here because Atlanta United has a philosophy that they want to play in. That's okay. He's fine with that. He'd be a great fit. He's under contract and he's in a job, and it's turned around a little bit for him at Club America, so maybe it's not going to be as easy for him to leave. But, yeah, he'd be a great fit. He's a better fit for the job than Gabriel Heinze in that Club America is the Atlanta United kind of club in Mexico, in that they are big, they're spending big money, there's big expectations. conspiracy theories, fans, media, harping at him, chirping at him. He doesn't care. He's been through all of that. Nothing. He's not going to see anything that he hasn't seen before. So he would be fine there. Bernd Dursberger says, the issue is that the backup striker is a different type than the starter. Obvious that adjustment caused a big disruption. I believe FDB wanted a backup that's more similar to Joseph. He says that's per Felipe style-wise. I haven't heard that at all. That FDB wanted something different and he got Adam John instead. Adam John is different, and I think that was one of the reasons you got him, was to give something different off the bench, because if you just have, and this goes back to flexibility, if you just have one way and that's it, you have some limitations. Joseph's a tough guy to have an exact replacement for off the bench. He's not a traditional kind of number 9. He's kind of unique, so that's going to be tough. I think FDB thought Castro could be that. He wasn't. Or he didn't get enough time to be, which is also a valid point. I mean, Castro did get himself into good positions in that game against the Red Bulls in the MLS's back tournament. Was he too tired to start in the second game? Or did they not like what they saw of him? Or did they not like the finishing and he blew some chances, so they didn't want to give him another opportunity? I don't know. I don't know how all that played out. That was weird. That whole situation was weird. Could Castro have ended up being that replacement? We don't know. I burned, if you might be right on this. I don't remember that conversation about FDB wanting somebody different. I understand the Adam John signing because he was somebody different than Joseph to give you a different option off the bench, because he wasn't looked at as a replacement long-term for Joseph. He was looked at as a different option late in games when you needed to be more direct. That's something that Adam John plays well. It does require some differences and some adjustment. But I do think, as we've seen during time with Adam John, he can be closer to Joseph's game than you think because he can play with his feet. He's not just a big hold-up striker. I think at times maybe he was trying to do too much, trying to open the game up more, trying to make more runs to the outside than he needed to. He needed to be more of himself, and the team could have adjusted to that. All of that is down to the differences with Frank not solving the problem, with Stephen Glass coming in and trying to solve the problem on the fly, and we're seeing it in fits and starts.
Yeah.
Mataflo says that's why I think Conway might be a good signing for money and his versatility in his game. Absolutely. And he's a young player who would accept that role and can grow in it. And I think he's done all he can do at Atlanta United too, outside of getting games to stay fresh. I mean, in terms of development, it's kind of time for the next phase for him, in my opinion. I think he's done really, really well with the twos. I think he'd be a good one. Burned also says the other way would be a winger who could also play up top like a Tito. Then you have the target as a separate. I think Castro was intended to be that. I don't know why that experiment ended after. How many minutes did he play in that Red Bulls game? Like 60 or 75?
Yeah.
If that was the idea, that should have happened more. And again, like I said earlier, I think those decisions, not solving that problem and not really committing to a way to solve the problem, it felt a little wishy-washy on Frank's end with, let's play Pitti as a 9 in Mexico. Okay, now we have a long break. Let's play Castro as a 9 in Game 1. Let's play John as a 9 in Game 2. It never felt like there was a consistent plan, and there was time to at least come up with a consistent plan. It'd be one thing if he played Castro in all three and it didn't go well, or you played Pitti in all three. Because I don't think Castro could have started in Mexico because he had just come back to the team. I don't know. Monteflo, I have not hit on Alexander Alvarado to Orlando yet. I believe I retweeted you on that last night. And I
think I did too.
Well, yeah, you retweet what I retweet, so I know how it goes. I always get that notification. Yes, it was Monteflo tweeted it last night. Alexander Alvarado to Orlando City. Paperwork done. Traveling this week. 4-year deal. AUKUS, which is his club, is keeping 50% of the rights. According to our Ecuadorian scout, El Monteflo, Alvarado played almost every minute of the U20 World Cup with Ecuador, became a full international, great on the ball, used both feet, can play an inverted winger role. He has an engine instead of lungs, so he shouldn't take long to incorporate. And he's been the one who has broken through out of that U20 bronze medalist team at the U20 World Cup. So he's the one who's played the most professional minutes That's a good get. That's a really, really good get for Orlando as they continue to get this type of talent. And when you look at South America, Ecuador, you can spend less. Are you getting more? I don't know. But are you getting good talent for less money? Yep. Yeah. So if you're not Atlanta, because there's a surcharge to go buy a Brazilian. There's maybe a slightly lesser surcharge to go buy an Argentine. I think there's a surcharge to buy a Colombian now out of Colombia. That league's values have gone up. Ecuador's good value. Really good value for some of these young players, and their development process has really improved in a big way. So that's another really good, smart move from Orlando City. So Abby is enjoying our laughing, enjoying the guests we had today, even with the nonsense with the virtual producer. That's why it's hard to have a whole bunch of guests, guys, and it's difficult because trying to make sure they're available, then deal with all the stuff with getting them on, and try to make the show format work and all of that. It's a challenge. So that's why sometimes it's not easy to do on a regular basis. We'll try to figure out more ways to incorporate it, but it is very hard, as you saw play out this morning. But it's great when we can get people on. Go ahead.
Castro played 56 in that game against Red Bulls when he started. The news out of Cincinnati this morning. Cincinnati acquired Croat attacker Franko Kovacevic on loan from Hoffenheim. That's their first loan with this relationship. He joined from Hajduk Split. Croat youth international forward joined Hoffenheim from Hajduk Split in 2019, yet to feature with the first team in Germany. And this is that first loan from the new club partnership with Hoffenheim.
Okay. I'll be curious to see what level of players they get in these loan opportunities. Sean Vergara, we're not live for much longer. We're not going 3 hours. We're going to go less than 3 hours. I promise you that. Okay, and Nick's is backing up Burns' point about, I think it was in the interview after Frank left, where he said something about wanting someone more like Joseph as a backup. Cool, I just forgot. Thank you guys for correcting me on that. We are not going 3 hours, Chiefs coach Steve. It is not happening.
OKC Energy have loaned C.J. Cochran to Nashville SC for the remainder of the season.
Okay, I think they have a goalkeeper injury situation, if I'm not mistaken. Williamson asks about J.J. Williams coming back now that Birmingham is out of the playoffs. I would assume not if Carlton and Kunga are not planning to be back with the team. I don't know if you're going to bring J.J. Williams back into it. You could. Just haven't heard an update on it. I don't know if he would factor into anything, to be honest. Ragamuffin, we're leaving. We're leaving. We're leaving.
Because we have to be back tonight at 7.
Yes, we're about to leave. I'm trying to get to all of you people. So, Mataflo. Alvarado's like Barco light with a better engine and more defensive commitment. So maybe more like a Miggy, since we're going to go conversations and replacements and such, although it's not a replacement for Orlando. I'll be curious to see him.
Edition.
Sure. I'll be curious to see him, Mataflo. I think it's a good move on paper for Orlando, and they've done a good job. No update on the 2020 CCL yet, Ricky Ricardo. That is accurate. I think the CONCACAF League for 2020 is about to get underway. So I don't know how they handle this Champions League for this year. I'm really starting to think they scrap it and fold the teams that are still in it into the 21 competition, which would be great for Atlanta because that would get them in. Mm-hmm. I'm just hoping. Claim your Twitch points for this marathon, SDH. Yes, we're not going 8 more minutes. Mataflo following up on it. We're not going 6 more minutes. I'm going to make sure we're done before 12. Mataflo talking about Ecuador, and I wanted to touch on this. They provide value with good potential and products. A lot of those clubs are not doing well financially, especially the clubs from Guayaquil. They're literally the worst. And historic clubs from Quito. No real surcharge for a good generation entering their next stage of development. I mean, they finished third in the U20 World Cup. So Ecuador would be a very good place to shop if you're Major League Soccer, and I think they will. Sean, I left Doug's podcast before he gave his Barco theory. I'm not getting into people's theories. I'm just not. I think it's clear that I disagree with the theories. I've told you how I feel on it. He's injured and hasn't been able to train consistently. You're stuck. It stinks. It stinks for him. It's not helping him. His value's not going up. It's not helping the club because you'd like to have him on the field. Nobody's winning through this, so I don't think there's a conspiracy theory. Usually when there's a conspiracy, somebody's benefiting somewhere. And I got nothing. Monteflow, I am no. We're out. We're out. Domer, with all this Orlando talk, is SDH is SDH amount the top 3 OFYO podcasts? I don't know. I don't know. We probably do talk about Orlando a good bit. I give them praise. I give them praise because Oscar Pereira is a great manager, and I think their front office is getting it right. I don't diss them just because they're Orlando City. I can find other reasons to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. Orlando's crap, according to Captain Ragamuffin. See, there you go. There's the old Orlando approach right there.
There you go.
We're leaving.
We're
going to eat lunch right now.
Yes.
We'll be back for soccer over there at 7 o'clock. We got this big, ridiculous nonsense of the Project Big Picture where they want to take the Premier League down to 18 teams. They want to ditch the Gummy Bear Cup. They want to reinvent the playoff system.
No more Community Shield.
Oh, who cares? That's the least of all the concerns. There's so much going on with this. We'll get into that tonight. We'll get into the qualifiers. We'll get into Nations League. We'll get into going back into league play next weekend. All kinds of stuff. 7 o'clock, twitch.tv/soccerdownhere, SDH app, soccerdownhere.net. Get your Marcelino Moreno scarves. We're running out. Last call for those. Mucha platiel.
Mucha platiel.